Uh-oh, it isn't out of the park baseball. Um, Before I get started, I want to say I do have some out of the park stuff to release soon. A few things that I've done and several topics I wanted to cover. But before that, I normally won't. I don't think I will normally talk about stuff like this in videos, but I thought I would bring it up as an explanation. The state where I live, in the previous election, like this most recent election, they approved recreational marijuana. And normally I wouldn't say anything like this, especially to the internet, to the public. But we approved it, and all the news papers or whatever, they were all saying, hey, it's not going to be until the end of March. Like the regulators, the health agency, and all that kind of stuff, they have to draw up license for all these different licenses for all these different places. They want quality standards, all the red tape kind of stuff that happens whenever a law changes. And there's a lot of there's a tax related to it, and they want to have IDs being checked like you would for alcohol sales or whatever. And so I only bring this up just okay. So I went to a dispensary and picked up a little bit, and I know some people have their craft beers, or they eat a whole pizza or a thing of ice cream or whatever, a Ben and Jerry's. But in this case, I did partake. It's been a long time since I've smoked, as when I was much younger, and I could get into that whole other thing as a story, but. So I'm obviously a little bit like loopy, and there's probably some kind of expression like friends don't let friends record videos intoxicated or something. I don't know, inebriated. I'm not like messed up, but I'm probably going to be like all over as far as my thinking goes if I was trying to make a normal video where I was just explaining something. And I'll probably explain some things in this video too, but I wanted to play a really chill game that is a different change of pace, and that I could sit and just play and talk. And this will be a different kind of video, probably when I do RimWorld. I'm just going to be more playing and just once in a while talking. There will be silence, but the nice thing is the game has really cool music, and I will at times talk about like what I'm doing and what I'm trying to plan for and build for. I will say, and I meant to say about the whole recreational marijuana thing. A little more freedom is never a bad thing in today's world, with all the craziness about political stuff, and that's why I didn't even want to bring this subject up, because it could so easily be politicized. Like people can be like, "Oh, you shouldn't," or "Oh, you should," and people are at each other's throats. And I don't really gravitates towards any of that stuff. Just like with baseball, I'm pretty agnostic when it comes to actually like being charged up when it comes to any kind of political stuff. I have my own beliefs, and I'm have very strong beliefs, but by and large, they're not something that I feel like I want to share with the world. They're if I'm sure if a careful observer could figure them out, my friends and my family no, but in today's world, with the way Twitter is and everybody's at each other's throats about every little perceived offense or all the terrible things that are happening, and trust me, there is a lot of stuff wrong in the world today. But I will say, like, kind of as just, I'm not taking a position one way or the other in a broader sense. Really, about whatever lens or topic you want to apply this expression to, but I think a little bit of freedom is good, and people can argue like, well, the way that the state of Arizona or other states are doing it, it's not really free; it's still all regulated, and I mean, you can split hairs about all this stuff, but I will say, just in a broader sense. When you think about the incarceration rate, the way that people's lives get destroyed when they're sent to prison for whatever reason. I mean, sometimes they're violent, dangerous criminals. they would be harming people if they were out or whatever. So I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't necessarily think you can just kumbaya and let everybody out, when there's some guy that's like running around killing people over and over again. You'd have to do something about that as a society, clearly. But with that being said, for way too long, our drug laws have been way draconian. The whole reefer madness thing. I mean, there's a whole subject about all this stuff, and I don't want to get into all of it. But I did want to bring up, when you think about, there's been people, plenty, I'm sure, and the records, at least in Arizona now, and I know in a lot of other states have done this too, and this is a big reason why people supported it. A lot of criminal records will be expunged, and hopefully quite quickly and over time, like employers, with that question, have you ever been convicted of a crime or whatever, when it's on the a job application, or when you're sending in a resume or something, and they ask that, and you're supposed to disclose. Hopefully, like some of the people that they had really bad luck, or maybe they were stupid and they brought it on themselves. But in either case, like, they have this thing where, don't get me wrong, I mean, drug abuse or being dependent on anything to excess is a slippery slope. It's dangerous. There's a reason that society has sort of these hang-ups about a lot of this stuff, because I think most of us know a person, or we have people close to us in our lives who we've seen them be swallowed up by addiction or whatever other vice, like that people really, my grandfather, I love the guy to death. He died too soon because he smoked like a ton of cigarettes. Like, he smoked like several packs a day, and I was around him so much growing up, so I'm probably gonna have lung problems when I'm older, just from all the secondhand smoke I was around. But that's besides the point. I just mean, so of course, like, when you lose somebody that you care about to some stupid reason like that, you want to be like, well, screw cigarettes, or, alcohol's the devil or whatever. And in some cases it is. Like, people, they take stuff way too far, and it ruins their lives, it ruins other people's lives, and it's so unfortunate and so sad. And sometimes those people are a danger to the broader society too. Like, when you think about people that are like repeat extreme drunk driver kind of a thing, where they're literally driving over and over again, loaded, their license gets suspended, they just keep driving, it gets revoked, they just keep driving, and getting caught. They're clearly a danger to all the rest of us that are out and about in public, and that might lose a son or a daughter because somebody's irresponsible decision. So don't get me wrong, like, I'm not saying like, just decriminalize everything and let people just run wild, but for way too long, when you think about marijuana and all this kind of stuff, some drugs, some substances, I think a lot of people now are willing to accept that, compared to things like alcohol or even tobacco, marijuana is, I don't pretend it's not harmful, and there aren't some downsides to it. There are several, and some people can have real big problems because of it. But compared to alcohol, what alcohol does to people's bodies, as far as like destroying their liver and all kinds of other stuff, and the way that alcohol contributes to domestic violence and just drunk driving deaths. I mean, I imagine there's people sometimes that get really stoned and they're really baked and they drive and they cause accidents, and they could probably kill somebody too. I'm sure it does happen, but I bet it's a much reduced number compared to drunk driving, in particular because alcohol lowers your inhibition. So sometimes, you think you're fine, and I mean, it's how everybody feels. Like, once you've had enough, if the moment you drink enough to sort of give you that buzz, you're already gonna lower your guard a little bit, as far as thinking like, maybe I shouldn't drive, call an Uber or whatever, because you're like, I feel fine, because you feel fine. I mean, and you just don't have that inhibition that you normally would to be like, I should. So people they screw up and then they get behind the wheel, and hopefully most of the time the worst that happens to them is they get arrested and they go through all that shit. And don't get me wrong, like the criminal justice system in the United States, it's very disgusting how it preys on people, and it's an industry. And that's a whole other thing. And again, like, I don't want to be super heavy into all this kind of stuff in a channel like this that's about gaming, but I brought it up because if I'm going to make a stream where I'm half baked and and I sound like I'm rambling and I'm all over the place, and I at least want there to be a it's not a stream, by the way, recording, to at least be an explanation. And I don't intend to do this often or anything, but it was just such a kind of a momentous thing. Just a tiny aside about myself and about my life. When I was in college, I looked into a study abroad program. I was going to a college here in Arizona, and they had one over in the Netherlands, and I picked the Netherlands. I mean, I knew you could smoke weed there and stuff like that too, don't get me wrong, but I picked the Netherlands because the Dutch are all quite proficient with English, but it was still a different language. For part of my degree, I had to learn a foreign language, at least to take the college equivalent to like 12 credit hours, sort of like an intermediate level, I would say, of language classes, not super advanced or anything. So I decided, here's how I can do this. I can go to the Netherlands and take these language classes, and then on the side, to justify that I could be there for a whole year, I looked into it, and their university actually offered literature courses, like for like Chaucer, like Middle English, even things like Beowulf and stuff like that. And I could get way deep into this stuff where it would be a whole different audience or people that would be interested in some of the similarities between Dutch and Middle English and then English. And when you study both at the same time, like, I was really surprised how it sort of helped me and woke me up to some of the cool things about early or sort of Middle English and that period of literature. A lot of people, if they read Chaucer or they have to read it in school, they don't really get like why it's so cool. But I won't get into all that. Anyways, I lived over there, and if you don't know, the Netherlands is that's where Amsterdam, that's sort of like the cultural capital of the Netherlands, not the political capital. And Amsterdam is well known. It kind of shocked me today when I went to the dispensary. And I talked to the guy. I said, like, I want flower, because they've got like vapes, all this concentrate stuff and everything, and I just want to smoke some bud like I did before. And when I was like much younger growing up, I missed the taste of smoking it, even though it's bad for you or whatever. And so I was like, I want a flower. I want a bud, or I want to smoke buds. And I mentioned to this guy that I had lived in the Netherlands, and he didn't even know. He didn't even know that the Dutch, it's like a big thing. They have the cannabis cup, and they've since the 70s, if I'm not mistaken, they decriminalized marijuana and a lot of other quote unquote soft drugs, things like magic mushrooms, ecstasy. I think. Not totally sure on all that. I mean, that stuff is a little more a gray area over there as far as their laws go, but marijuana has been treated roughly like alcohol over there since the mid 70s. You can go to coffee shops, they're called coffee shops, and they're just like dispensaries here, and you can like sit on a terrace and smoke a joint and have a coffee or whatever, and people aren't crazy or irresponsible about it. Generally, I mean, of course, there's always some people in any group that their whole life falls apart regardless of what they're doing. So, there are people that probably shouldn't be smoking weed or whatever. But I just bring this up because that was 75 when a country did that. And they had all those decades to show that, hey, their society didn't crumble. Now, truthfully, there are some problems with the decriminalized marijuana and other stuff in the Netherlands. It's not like the laissez-faire paradise that sometimes it's cracked up to be. I mean, there is some pushback within Dutch society to some of their permissiveness. Oh, I got it. And by the way, I live by a really busy street, so there's probably going to be like weird noises, like mopeds going by and stuff. It's Saturday night when I'm doing this. I normally try to stream during times when the street's not so busy, but it's probably going to be busy and loud tonight, and I have headphones on, so I'm probably not hearing some of the loud stuff the mic might pick up. Anyways, so the Dutch, they had been, for decades and decades, they had this really reasonable attitude towards things like marijuana. Don't get me wrong, like I think like things like heroin and cocaine and stuff like that still very illegal over there, but their punishments, they might have more like treatment programs, and there might be a little more of a sensible way of dealing with those kinds of problems instead of just throwing people into a cage, and in many cases just destroying people's lives. Like that's the only reason I wanted to say all this, is because hallelujah that more and more countries in the United States are being sensible about this topic. And obviously, I mean, I've seen stuff that the Congress is likely to sort of do some things on a federal level where they change sort of the scheduling of marijuana. Essentially, we're not very far from it becoming decriminalized along the lines of alcohol or tobacco. And then there will be a tax on it because it's a vice. And I mean, I think that's it's been too long coming. And I just, so okay, with all that being said, I wanted to play a game that was more laid back and that I didn't have to just when I do play Out of the Park, I try to be very I think I need to feed my cat, so I'm gonna stop this real quick and I'll be right back. All right, mission accomplished. Hopefully that was what she wanted. She was sort of rubbing against stuff and wanting attention, so hopefully it was because it was dinner time. Anyways, kind of forgot what I was saying, but doesn't really matter. RimWorld's a really chill game, and it's easy to play and be able to talk some things over and still just relax when I'm doing it. With Out of the Park, it's a lot more like, oh, this guy, and I want to talk about this, and like with the Out of the Park stuff, I'm still very new to that game, of course, and I cringe when I think back, and I'm like, oh, I was saying that like I was so sure about this thing, about how this works in the game, and it probably doesn't. Like there's a lot of things that I learn, and people point out to me, like PF Holden, who has played the game for a ton of time, and he really knows a lot about it. And there's a lot of people on the forums that have really looked into a lot of stuff, and so a lot of times when I say stuff like, oh, this means this and you should do this and blah blah blah, I don't really know. It's just I'm just talking through how I think it to work, and why my rationale for why I'm doing what I'm doing. And in this game, I am so embarrassed. This game is probably in my Steam library. I think this game is the most hours played, and it is by far and away my favorite game ever. And I have like 950 hours or something like that in it, which for some people that's probably not a lot. But I will say I am so embarrassed that for all those hours, I'm not very good at this game. There are people here on YouTube, like if you are here to watch a good RimWorld tutorial or a good video, or like somebody that's teaching you all these tricks and they're real badass and they're surviving against the worst odds, you're not going to find that here. You're going to find somebody that has a really good like chance. Like if you're an experienced player, you're going to look and go, oh, this is the easy start. This is no big deal. And then you're going to watch me fail miserably because I don't understand some of the game mechanics very good or very well. And so I watch YouTube videos of people playing RimWorld, and they're great at it, and they know like, oh, I can stand in the door and it does this, and then I pop back out and shoot, and then I stand back in the door, and they have like all these little mechanical approaches to solving problems that give them a huge advantage. And I'm not good at any of that kind of stuff. Like I like to just sort of go and build, and eventually raids typically wipe me out because I'm just not. I've watched guides on how to build kill boxes and all this sort of thing, but it's just I just don't like to play like that. A lot of times I just play and I start to set up stuff and then things go horribly wrong, and then I'm like, okay. And it's like some of the most, it's going to be an example of some pretty crummy gameplay when you really know this game. And I don't have the expansion yet either, because I felt like I never even came close to digging into the depths of what this game really is, and ever being any good at it. So it's sort of like, oh yeah, now you want me to do a whole bunch of other stuff when I couldn't even really master the previous. If you like this game and you want to see the royalty, I think the royalty DLC, is that what it's called? Sorry, but maybe over time, if I play this a lot more and learn some things and get good at it and feel like doing so, I'll do the royalty DLC. But for now, this is quote unquote vanilla RimWorld, but it's really not. Like, there's a gazillion mods that I have, so I've played enough to where there are certain things that I like as far as quality of life mods. I can't go into all these and explain what all these are. Recently, when I started to dabble back into this game, a lot of my mods were out of date because I hadn't played since the DLC, and so I went back through and tried to get all those mods back. And then as I was in the workshop, I was seeing all these other mods, and I'm like, ooh, that sounds cool. Ooh, that's cool. Ooh, that. And so I added like just a shit ton of mods, and I'm sure this is probably like the most ridiculous, unbalanced, dysfunctional kind of a RimWorld game. Some of this stuff is totally logical and fine. Like, it's not really anything that would raise alarm. But I'm sure, because of just my own lack of knowledge of this game and my real mastery of it, there's probably all kinds of stuff in here that really good RimWorld players would scoff at and be like, oh, I can't believe that makes the game so screwed up, or why would you put that, or that makes it too easy, or whatever. I know the game for some people it's easy and they're great at it. I am not one of those people, so I do all right, and I sort of have a strategy to what I'm trying to do, but there's just things that hold me back that I don't know if I'll ever overcome, because I'm just not that kind of a game player where I really go that extra mile to exceed on anything. I like to get into stuff and to dabble into it and to be really interested in it, but I move on a lot. I'm very I hope that I can make these videos and they'll just sort of be long form, and then the out of the park videos can be a lot more structured, and then I'll have two different games that I can be playing. I did watch Mike Holden had a live stream, and I unfortunately missed the live part of it, but I was able to catch it with Aussie Villain, and that was really cool. And I mean, Aussie Villain brought up how that one of the football manager saves that he saves, it's his like it would be his real save if he was playing that game privately, and he does that so he doesn't feel like him making the videos is like work. And I understand that, because with even the really limited out of the park stuff that I've made, and talking through things, I can see where like you have to think a little bit about it and be a little prepared, even for doing something as basic as what I was doing. And then with him doing things where he's like doing sketches and green screen and just the level of entertainment to it, like the energy that he has, you can tell that like it would be a real bummer if you put so much into all that kind of stuff and then you turn around and you just don't have the energy to really play the game just for yourself, just for like your own I want to enjoy this while I'm doing it too, not just sort of picking a thing that will be entertaining. So it's cool that he plays those games as if they're saves that he would really be playing. And so I mean, obviously I'm doing the Cubs thing, and I want to talk a whole bunch about Out of the Park, but I don't want to get into all those topics now. But this game, I think this would be a great game to play, especially in more downtimes when I'm feeling more like just sitting back and playing a game and maybe talking a little bit. So now here we are. We're probably like 25 minutes into this video, and I'm just now getting past the title screen. So I haven't even remotely talked about this game, like what this is. I mentioned it in another video. In this game, you're somehow stranded on a planet in the outer realms of space, on the rim of the galaxy, the RimWorlds, and you crash land, and there's various levels of difficulty and various types of starts and biomes, and there's and essentially your goal in this game is to survive and ultimately thrive to the point to where you can build a spaceship to escape this world. That would be the win condition, the end state of this game. But some people like to play it just to build up a really badass colony, and some people, they like to be like really heartless and despicable in this game. And or there's some people that, like I said, they're so good at it they can take the most extreme type of scenarios and they thrive. Later on, as I start to do more of these videos, and I'm going to do this with Out of the Park too, I want to put out like videos where it's just like, here's some of my favorite RimWorld streamers, here's some of my favorite Out of the Park streamers. And I personally, I don't know a lot of I don't watch Twitch very often. There are a lot of really cool streamers, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of YouTubers that I watch that I really like, and I know that they actually are probably a lot more active through Twitch. But it's not how, it doesn't work for me to consume media that way. I'm very like, I do something and then I have to step away from it for a while, and go do things. And, like my phone rings, or, somebody, like a neighbor stops by or whatever. And I can't, Twitch streamers, that's a whole other thing where they're performing and they're on stage for that time the stream's on. Some of them, I know some people are just sitting back and chilling and it's all good, but I wouldn't feel right like starting a stream and getting, like right now, like here I'm 30 minutes into this video and not even really doing a lot, just talking, which is cool. People like that on Twitch too, I mean, but then randomly be like, I have to go, and then just and be gone, and then like 3 hours later come back, and that's why I think recording the videos are so much better for me, because I can always stop it and walk away, and I might forget what I was talking about, and if I really wanted to, I could go back and listen to the last little clip of what I was saying. But anyways, so this video game is perfect for this kind of a video or mental state that I'm in, or level of energy or whatever. So okay, I'm gonna make a new colony, and now I know I said I'm terrible at this game, and I am, but this is the way I like to start this game. This is the naked brutality start, except you are tribal level tech, and you only have one survivor. So this is tough in the very beginning, because like you're just struggling to survive, to even like clothe yourself. When that first raid comes, that single raider, like a lot of people when they normally play RimWorld, it's a joke to them because it's like some tribal guy that's coming up with like a spear or something. But for me, it's like serious shit, because I'm naked. Like I have nothing when I start, and I cover some real basic stuff in those lead ups to somebody attacking, but I'm so like scatterbrained and ADHD that I really don't prepare myself the way that a really good player would. So if you're trying to watch this for sort of a demonstration of how to do this game, you're in the wrong place. And I'm picking the medium difficulty because, God, it's hard enough the way it is. And reload anytime, just because if I screw up or have to close the game suddenly, I don't want somehow the recording to be messed up. That is my seed. Here are my gazillion mods. I mean, if this was a really serious thing, I would go through what all these are and show them to people, but it's not that serious. So if you're not familiar with this game, I mean, almost everybody probably is. This is such a classic game, and it's really widely heralded as being sort of a masterpiece, I think. And so I have the setting to where it only does 30% of the planet, and I'm trying to look for like a settlement location where I'm near these purple these little purple houses. These are like potentially friendly advanced settlements. These are settlements that they'll have dealings with you. You can raise your relations with them. They can become your allies, and they will sell you like more advanced weapons, and they'll buy some of that kind of stuff from you. Whereas the little yellow teepees, I guess these are meant to be, or maybe they're like some other kind of a structure that's similar. These are meant to be, I don't know what that big boom was. These are meant to be like little tribal villages that are friendly to you, or that could be friendly to you. And the nice thing about these, I guess, is you can sell like basic weapons, like bows and arrows and like things. If you were really starting out with nothing, like you can sell those types of things to tribal people in this game. And a big thing is they will buy food from you, and wood, and like raw materials. And they also can sell a lot of like food and animals and things like that. I mean, it makes sense. Like, the more advanced colony can sell those sort of things too. But they'll typically, like the advanced colony will be able to sell you alcohol. The tribal one will be able to sell you, I think it's called psychite tea. It's meant to be, I think, like a mescaline or a peyote stand-in. I'm not totally sure on some of the stuff in RimWorld like that. So I'm trying to pick a spot that is sort of like in between some settlements, so I can visit them and have trade caravans and stuff, and potentially ally with them, and they can help me out potentially if I'm being raided by a really strong raid. Some people probably like go it alone, and some people probably kill all the settlements around them or whatever. It's RimWorld. People do all kinds of stuff. This isn't so bad down here. It has these two advanced settlements off of a dirt road, or like a heavy pack path, or there's a certain categorization of what these are. I think, how do you see it again? I have not played this game. I dabbled with it just a little bit recently. But I've not played this game in forever, so I'm going to be like fumbling around and trying to remember things. Dirt path. So your movement, like if you have a colony on this thing and then you want to make a caravan to, like, say, the settlement, you'll move a little bit quicker along the road, the dirt path. I mean, there are like actual roads, like paved roads and things like that, that can be nice to locate near. For access to other settlements and things. But the problem with if I settle down here is typically there's another win condition for this game, as I understand it. I've never played this game so much, and I've never gotten very far at all with a lot of this stuff. So take what I say with a grain of salt. One of the win conditions for this game is you go and rescue a friendly AI, and somehow that maybe you use that in your spaceship, or that's somehow related to getting you off the planet. But that's a really difficult mission. Like, you have to have a lot of, they're called in this game your colonists, the people, like when you. This game is, imagine it's sort of like a real-time strategy game where you're sort of like The Sims in the same sense. You're controlling like the individual colonists. You sort of like set them up, you delegate them in a certain way, and then they buzz around like little bees doing stuff, and you sort of like direct what they're doing, but you don't like have immediate control of all their actions. You can, in some circumstances, control them a little bit, but by and large, they're called pawns in this game, like pawns on a chessboard, because you're essentially like sort of like a god figure, where you're setting up what's going on, and then they're doing they're doing your bidding, essentially. Even though what's so hilarious about this game is these pawns, they have different personalities, they have different needs. Things will set them off. They'll like have mental breaks, and they'll start beating the shit out of one of the other colonists, and they'll light your whole colony on fire, or just all kinds of things that are really quirky and twisted. So yeah, like your colonists are called pawns. So if you hear me just saying pawns, if you don't know this game and you hear that over and over again, it's just saying it's another word for colonist. I forget why I was even talking about colonists. Oh, but you have the reason I was saying settling down here, because apparently I think that that AI, like, it tends to show up in the poles or some like really remote location, and so I'm guessing if we were to settle down here, like, it would be somewhere over, like, way over here, and that's a long time of traveling in game. It takes a lot of resources to be able to like move really far distances and have the food and then when you get there, you're still having to like fight a really bad battle or whatever. I don't totally know. I'm not that good at this game, so because I'm not that good at this game, and the end condition is like laughable to me that I would even worry about it. I am going to settle here because it's in between these two settlements, and there are various, like, you can click on a hexagon, and you can look up the terrain, and it will tell you stuff like the average temperature, which is a range. So sometimes it will be hotter than this, sometimes it will be colder as far as the average. It tells you like how long you can grow crops in that biome. In this case, because this is like a tropical rainforest, you can grow year round. The problem with the rainforest, it's a minor problem. Rainforest is a pretty abundant way to start. The problem with the rainforest, I believe, I don't know if it's still in this version of RimWorld, or if one of my mods screws it up or whatever, I have no idea, but I think you have a higher chance of contracting diseases, and that can be an issue, but still, this I'm pretty sure, like, besides temperate forest, this is like an easy start, because there's food everywhere. There's like a gazillion trees and stuff. So it's not like this is real hardcore stuff that I'm going to be doing, and I'm still going to like struggle mightily because of my own ineptitude. But so you can click these different hexagons, and you can reveal like what these are mountains. So they're like, there's these, you'll see when I go into the actual map, there's like these huge rock structures, and you can sort of tunnel into them and build in them, but there are issues with doing that. These are large hills, so there's a decent amount of these rock structures on the map, but there is still a little more open space. And then, for instance, this one, or let me use one of these ones, this is small hills, so there are like a little bit of hills, but it's a lot more open. And then there's like it's just like flat. You can have like, it's flat, but there is a dirt path in it. And a lot of people like building into mountains or into large hills and stuff. It can be a really nice thing, because it sort of becomes like, parts of it become your walls, and there's a whole system in this game where your colonist, their mental state is based on how pleasant the surroundings look to them. And it's a very laborious process, but if you smooth out certain kinds of stone, like if you build into a mountain or you build into a hill, and you put rooms into, like, you carve rooms into it, and then you polish the stone and the floors and everything. It gives like a beauty boost. It makes it very beautiful. Like, if you imagine, if you cut into like a granite in this game doesn't give the beauty boost. There's all these guides explaining like what material gives what benefit. It's all very involved. But so a marble, let's say there was this big hill of marble, like and these people dug into it, and then once they sort of carved out like bedroom size spaces, they actually like smoothed down all the rough marble, and then it would look like really beautiful. It would look like some kind of like palace or temple, or like some ancient Roman thing or whatever, or ancient Greek. So of course a colonist that's like lives in that room is going to be like, oh, we're doing great, things are going good, until like the raid happens and it kills like half the colony or whatever. But so when you're picking spots, like, players will purposely, if they want to challenge, they'll build in the desert with just open stuff, so there's not a whole lot of materials. But because like I'm not that good of a player, and there's these two settlements about equidistant on this road. This one will be a little further away unless I were to build more over towards it, because it has that bend, and I think your caravan it'll follow whatever's going to be the quickest route. But so it might look like on the map, you're like, why doesn't it just cut across? It will save so much time. But based on the movement speed, this might be the shortest route. I don't know until I actually if I were to plot the course. Then I could see like how many days it takes to estimated days to travel. So I'm going to pick something in the middle, just because this is the first time I'm doing a video for this game anyways, and I'm probably going to fail hard. So I might as well just do something that gives me a good advantage, and I don't look like I'm just like a total idiot, like, 950 hours and he like died in the first 10 minutes or whatever, which could happen. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've probably had worse playthroughs of this game. All right, so I'm picking a spot. Let me see. Sandstone, limestone, and marble. So marble is it's a really beautiful material, but it's weak. As if you were like building walls out of it, it doesn't really have like the HP that some of the other materials have. I think sandstone, if I remember correctly, it's a really good material to build artwork out of, because your colonist, your pawns will they'll work it very quickly because it's soft, and I think it's possibly one of the weakest stones for building like walls and for defensive purposes, as far as like if an enemy was shooting it with a gun or something like that. Limestone is it's kind of in the middle. It's more like a building material, where it'll be sort of strong. I don't think there's a beauty gain for it, or maybe there's a modest one. And limestone is I think it's hard to work. So it's like if you were going to take this small hill hexagon, you would be thinking like, okay, we're not going to have like really, really strong, because the strongest material, natural material in the game that you would be building like walls and things out of, or carving into a mountain or whatever, is granite. Unless they've changed things. Look, I haven't played in so long that all this stuff could be so different, and I'd be sitting here making an ass of myself. But granite is so like, for instance, this map, there's only small hills, but it has sandstone, granite, and limestone. So granite would be like, I could build a 2-layer thick wall, and the outer layer could be granite and the inner layer could be limestone, and it would be pretty strong for like a natural material. It's not like full granite, which would be ideal. It's for a defensive kind of a thing. But I don't like this though, because like if you can find one, it's nice to have a map that has granite and has marble. And hey, sandstone is nice too, because like I said, you can build artwork out of it. But this kind of map is really nice, because then for the stuff you want to be strong and to be able to stand up to punishment, you can use granite, but you can use marble in rooms and parts of your colony where beauty is important, and your colonists spend a lot of time so that they get a good mood buff. That is a big part of this game, is sort of like Sims. I mean, I hate to make that comparison, because a lot of RimWorld fans would be like cringing with how EA has just dumbed down Sims. But if you think about Sims at its like most basic premise, you have these like little automated beings, and they have needs, like they need food and they need to go to the bathroom and they need to do this and that. And if you meet their needs and you do things a certain way, like they start to thrive and they get a job and they get a better job and all those things, right? That are sort of part of just playing that game. And in this game is not that different in that sense, that your pawns, they have needs. Like they don't want to live and like just sleep out in the open. They don't want to eat raw meat. They don't want to every time they walk, around that corner, there's a dead body decaying there. Like they don't want to see that. So when you're playing this game, you have this kind of delicate balance act sometimes, where your pawn is like right on the verge of having a nervous breakdown because a lot of terrible things have happened or things are really rough, and it can be an ending for your colony before you even really get going, depending. Like I've had when I do this naked single tribal member, what's so difficult about it is in some of the first raids in particular, if you happen to like get a cut and it becomes infected, or just weird things where it's really easy to die. You greatly increase your survival chance in this game as if you have 2 colonists at the least. So one of the big things you try to do in the very beginning of this game, besides surviving, like besides meeting the basic needs, the hierarchy of needs, food, shelter, water, even though, water is not a thing in this game. But food and shelter and security are, certainly. And so you're sort of struggling with meeting those needs in a really difficult situation. And then suddenly the computer sends this guy like walks into your map and he attacks your little hovel that you've built, and you have like the most rudimentary weapons to fight back. And there are ways like you can sort of like draw them into dying, and it's not at the very, very beginning. Typically, like there's ways that it's easy enough to cheese the AI. But I have problems when it starts to get more complicated, and I still really haven't built up my defenses the way you're supposed to, and then I get crushed. But that's me not growing as a player. And people that are really good at this game, if they ever were to watch a playthrough like this, they would see right away, like, oh, that's a mistake. But the beauty of this game is that the real purpose of it, besides escaping the planet and all that stuff, it's just to create experiences and to sort of watch how they play out, and to do what you can to sort of influence them and to try to do good things. But if you're like me and you're a more casual player of this sort of a thing, you probably don't go to that extreme, and you'll never really succeed at it. Like a totally different game, very different style. It took me forever to actually beat the final ship in Faster Than Light, FTL. In that game, I mean, there's people that they probably think it's child's play, but that game was noted when it first came out for being hard, and for it to be normal for you to die in that game often, and it's part of the fun. It's like a roguelite, so like it's the fun is just the replayability, like to see if you can get farther next time, or when you finally do get to that. A lot of times, like for me, when I was so bad at it, I would get to the final ship, and then I'd get crushed because I was like nowhere near in a good shape to fight it. Anyways, sorry about all these tangents. That's a little bit of the smoking. But I'm gonna take. I actually don't like mountain maps, because I just sort of feel like they're too constrictive. It's a really good thing actually, because you can have choke points and you can funnel enemies to certain areas, but I don't like Like I like to sort of do goofy stuff, and that's why I die so harshly. God, I can't find any that are small, and I mean, this could work because sandstone I think has a modest beauty gain, but I just want small with granite and marble, and ideally like slate, which could be that's a good outdoor flooring and that kind of. It's like quick to work. I think it's really weak though as far as withstanding damage. Um, I mean, there's granite and slate, and marble and slate, but there's no. Well, this is riveting gameplay. Watching somebody like click a bunch of the same squares over and over again. Well, here we go. It's large hills. That's kind of a compromise. That's going to be home. It's a little bit closer to this one than I'd like, and so we're sort of like still far from the road. So it will add another day or two to going to these settlements. Probably like 2 days extra to go to this one, one day or whatever to go to this one. So, but this is going to be home. So we hit next, and now we get the RNG. Sort of the potential colonists or the pawns, and I can always like randomize these and get different stats, different abilities if none of these look good. A lot of people that are really really good at this game can just take whatever the game gives them and pick one of these, and they'll still succeed no matter what. I'm not that good, obviously, and there are some things about this kind of a starting when you are like naked, you have nothing, and you have a tribal level of research. So your research speed is extra slow. It's like a balancing thing in the game. You need to be able, as like a single pawn, you need this pawn to be able to do a lot of everything that's really important in the very beginning. And some of this stuff, like you can kind of you can skirt by, like just because it's just you get lucky. But like, okay, this pawn would not work because I mean it could work, but you would be really lucky. With having no medical skill, this pawn can't take any kind of a job where the pawn even heals herself. And it's a big problem because even in like a really basic a fight, like you go to kill an animal or something and it like scratches you, an infection, and you're dead, and that's game over. And then more serious stuff, like without the ability to do any kind of medical treatment, you're a goner. A couple other things like some of these colonists, these pawns will have they have pre-existing conditions. Sometimes they're good, most of the times they're bad, and you want to avoid certain ones. I mean, I won't get all into that, but like here's a guy, he wouldn't be bad except for the no medical, because some of the things you'd like in this like single standalone one man gang or one woman gang. You want them to be able to shoot and to be able to melee attack, because they're going to be doing both most likely. It would be nice if they can build things. If they don't really have the skill, that's fine, but it's going to make things a lot slower, and you're going to waste a lot of the materials that you do collect. So it's a problem if your pawns don't have if the single pawn doesn't have any construction. Mining, depending, like if you're trying to like cut into the side of a mountain or hill, or go get steel or whatever, like it's nice to have some. Otherwise they are painfully slow even if you speed the game speed way up. Cooking is sort of there are certain like thresholds where if you hit a certain level in cooking, then it greatly reduces your chance of food poisoning. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's cooking level 5. Once you hit 5, I think like you have it reduces your chance of food poisoning to like 2.5% or something like that. I used to know all this stuff. I learned it all from people that actually cared enough to figure it all out. But but when you cook before that level, like, you have a much greater chance of food poisoning, which is not fatal in this game, but it will like make you like your pawn will suddenly like stop and they'll throw up, or they'll move really slow, or they get really hungry really fast because they threw up all their food. And so it can be like, if you're a single pawn and you're up against it and a raid comes and you have food poisoning or whatever, like, you're going to get your ass kicked. So that's not really a. I mean, you do want, if possible, you want to have something in cooking, like 3 at a minimum or something, so you're able to like hopefully do it to where to the point to where you're not like totally risking poisoning this pawn, and then just having a game over for a stupid thing like that. Plants tends to be pretty important because a lot of your early source of food, sometimes there's berries nearby that you can sort of gather in a group and haul them back, and berries are pretty safe food to eat raw. They do have like a 5% chance to give you food poisoning, if I'm not mistaken. So it's nice to have plants, because at the very least you can cut those berries and they do regenerate over time. It's not a very time effective way to feed yourself, besides maybe the first day or two, and you have a lot more important things to be taken care of instead of like out picking berries. But you want to have some plants, not only because of the berries, but because you want to plant food crops for yourself. Once you sort of get like a meager setup going, you want to plant something for the future that hopefully when you harvest it, you're able to like set something that's a lot more shelf stable. So think of it this way, like, especially because I'm a tribal person, but I'm naked and afraid, I have nothing. So all the food that I gather or that I go and hunt or whatever, it needs to be consumed within a pretty quick time frame, because in this game, if you don't know, food like, it has a shelf life. Like, if just like in real life, if you go and cook dinner on your stove tonight and you just leave it sitting on your counter, the next day you probably don't want to eat that food because it probably has like bacteria that grew in it and it's unsafe to eat. It's like the food safety type common sense thing that we all, put that in the fridge. When you got some leftovers or whatever, you put it in the fridge, because then it slows that bacterial growth to the point to where when you take it back out and you eat the next day, it's not going to hurt you. But it's and the only way to really like quote unquote stop that bacterial growth is to freeze. And even then, like, certain food, you can only freeze it for so long, and then it's kind of borderline. I mean, you could eat it in a starvation type situation, but probably some people at a certain point, they don't want to eat it, like stuff that gets freezer burned or whatever. And stuff that's been in the freezer for a really long time, arguably, like, some of that stuff can be unsafe to eat as far as like food poisoning goes. It's I don't know if I really knew that freezer was freezing stuff and it never had any kind of issues, never lost power or whatever, I would be less concerned. But if if you don't really know, then yeah, you'd probably be suspect of food that's been frozen for a super long time. I only bring it up because in this game you can build like giant refrigerators, like freezers, like walk-ins, and so you can like pre-make a whole bunch of meals, and then you throw them into this freezer, and then only like every day does a certain colonist haul some of those meals out to actually be consumed, and then they would decay like within a day and a half, I believe, that is the time frame, if you just leave them out. But if you freeze them, they keep indefinitely. But when you're in this kind of a start that I'm going to be in, you have none of that kind of technology, and so you become like, you're very by the day, like for the day. You have a lot more tedious activities as far as like you're gathering what little plant-based food you can. You go and hunt what like really basic animals are in the map that aren't going to like rock you and ruin your playthrough right off the bat. But every time you're getting some of that sort of stuff, like the berries are nice because if you can hold off on eating them, they will stay good for like 14 days, which is a long time in the game. I'll talk more about the seasons as kind of we're going through them and how it works. It feels so weird to talk about this stuff because this game is so well known, and like people that probably look at search out RimWorld content, they're like, yeah, we know all this stuff, man. But the way that I talk about stuff as I play it, I just explain everything to death, and it's because it's like how I understand it, so I'm thinking of it as I'm talking about it. But animals, oh, and I meant to say, like, foods that you plant in the ground, in particular, like rice, is a very nice early game crop because it's quick to harvest, it's quick to plant, it matures very quickly as long as the soil's good. And what's great about rice is it has a super long shelf life in real life and in the game. I think in the game it's like 60 days or something, which is a huge amount of time. So you can essentially, I'm bringing up, like, you can stockpile some of these berries for like your intermediate, you're sort of in the middle time frame of food to consume. You would be like stockpiling your rice as like just to be like a really long-term food stuff. In particular, if you play in maps where you have like an actual growing season, and I'm not going to have that trouble in this map, so I don't even know I'm going all into this, but if you play in maps that have like freezing winters, it's very important that you sort of figure out how much food you have to grow and set aside, so that when the winter comes and you're not really able to harvest berries or harvest your crops because the ground is frozen, then you're hunting whatever animals you might be able to get in the map, and then when you have to, you're eating your rice, and hopefully it ties you through the winter. And normally, except in really extreme circumstances, most good players, they're good at it. There's people that clearly know, like, I need this amount for this kind of a situation for this many colonists. Like, they know all this stuff, and I just sort of like plod through and hopefully figure some of it out. Clearly he has no medical, so this guy's disqualified. Animals is not good early game. There can be cool things about taming animals, and some enormous uses for having them. The problem with a lot of stuff, and this is a whole other system that I would kind of have to explain as I'm playing, but the problem with animals, or with many other things in this game, is they increase your colony wealth, and that is one of the factors that determines how difficult the raid is that the AI sends after you. I didn't say it in the previous screen, but there's different types of AI in this game that will send different kinds of raids at you. Like, there's one that the one that I'm playing is sort of like a medium. It's a mix where sometimes good things happen, sometimes bad things happen, sometimes really bad things happen. Like, it's a little more even in the spacing for how it comes, and sort of the way it ramps up the level of difficulty. It matches kind of your progress as a colony and as pawns. There's another AI. A lot of the really good players tend to play on this AI because it makes for a fun game. Randy Random. It just sort of sends things randomly. Like, there's no rhyme or reason to any of it. It can be like an instant game over. Like, you can like be barely starting out and it will send like some like really hard fucking thing that you can't kill. Animals, they're nice, and there's some cool things about animals, but they will increase the wealth of your colony, which can make for more difficult raids, and depending on your situation, that could be a bad thing. So you don't want to like be running out in the very beginning and just taming all these animals without any real reason for doing so, because you're going to get a whooping coming your way whenever the AI sends, like, maybe not the next raid, but the raid after that one will probably be tough. Crafting is important. I forget the threshold level that you want this to be to make certain items that are important in the beginning. So this is always another fun thing about when I play these. I can't remember some of the basic stuff, so I sometimes would pick pawns and they can't do stuff that they need to do, and then it really screws me. But it's fun to try to power through that mistake and see if I can. But so yeah, all the really basic items that you make, like things like bows and arrows and knives and just like simple items like that, it would be under crafting. And so having a better level, you make higher quality stuff and makes it faster. And some stuff you're not able to make until you hit certain levels. But it's not like for the really fancy things or more involved things. That's what artistic is for, like sculptures and things like that. Construction, you can have really pawns with really high construction ratings, and then when they build things like beds or tables or things like that, like they have like art carved into them, and they become like they're famous across the whole planet because it's like the baddest ass table around or whatever. Like that's a funny thing in this game too. And to read the art, some of it's hilarious. It's randomly generated, but it also has like some basis to your colony. Like it might use the names of two colonists in an event that happened, and it's like, you know, this colonist frolicked in the water while a nearby thrombo was shot or whatever, and it'll just be some goofy story. Sometimes it's totally abstract. It's like it's a bunch of blobs and they're in a circle. And so it's a funny thing about this game, all these little quirks. But social is obviously I think it like helps just when your pawns are in kind of a recreational mode in the same kind of a room, and they may be talking to each other, maybe like pawns that have high social skills. It helps the other pawns feel accepted, or I don't really know about that. Like it might help morale in that way, but the main thing that I know it's super important for, but not really in the early game, to some extent it is, but not early game, is when you capture prisoners. Like if whoever raids you, like they might survive it, but they're like unconscious or they're knocked down on the ground, and you can like save them, and you at least want to heal them so you can get some healing boost to your healing skill, even if you wind up like killing them or letting them die or some horrible thing. Like this game is pretty messed up in that way. Like you can be like very calculated, psychopathic, sociopathic. Like you are like healing a guy and then you like punch him again just so you can heal him some more, like that kind of crazy stuff. But social, if you have a prisoner and you treat them like with the basic, like you meet their basic needs, they're going to be unhappy, but like over time you can send a colonist in there to talk to them, and eventually if it works, it breaks their resistance, and then you can recruit that colonist to your colony if you want. Some of the enemies that you capture, you wish they die, and some of them you'll just leave to die because they have like really negative traits that you don't want in your colony. And I can talk more about those when we go through some of these, but I just sort of clicked on one and was talking through the traits themselves. Intellectual is at a certain point, especially if you're like more like a high-tech society, unlike the tribal, you build a research bench and you start to research some of the basic technologies that will ultimately unlock the more elaborate research bench, which then unlocks more elaborate technologies. But some of the more advanced stuff like electricity and windmills and batteries and those kinds of things, so that you can have a refrigerator or a freezer, so that you can have air conditioning in your colony and things like that. It's all done through research, and then through some of the materials that you gather and things like that. So it's not an important skill right away. Like hopefully after you've captured one or two raiders, or they've joined through some kind of a random event, hopefully one of them has intellectual, and then you can turn that person into a researcher, that kind of a thing. But you don't typically do that in the beginning. So, and another thing I can mention, just because this guy, the colonists do have ages, and they can die of like old age type conditions. So like he's not that old. You got to think this is sort of in the future when humans are traveling in space and things like that. So these ages, a human in this time period, they possibly live to be 100, or like very commonly, like it's, you're not like, oh, he's 56, he's going to be dead in 20 or 30 years or whatever. He might live, another 50 years. And this game has like organ replacements and bionic organs and all kinds of crazy stuff. So I mean, you can keep colonists going and going and going if you really want, and if you really go to the trouble and have the resources to do it. Some colonists can probably live indefinitely, but by then, I mean, most people probably would have either been destroyed by the AI or they got off the planet. So I don't know. You see some people, if you go on Reddit, like there's an incredible subreddit for this game, and people just post the coolest stuff. But anyways, and I meant to say, like, your colonists, so they have these conditions, and it seems stupid, like, oh, he has an old gunshot and it itches sometimes. Well, that gives him just a little bit of pain, and this, along with a lot of other problems, like if your colonist is hungry and he slept on the ground and he watched his best friend die, and then suddenly his old gunshot hurts a little bit, like that could make him have a nervous breakdown, and then he could do all kinds of crazy stuff that could really end your game. But the thing is, what's funny is some of these conditions, like this one, right foot, you could replace his leg. You could put a like a bionic leg on him, and then he wouldn't have that itchy gunshot anymore, and he would actually lose that 3% debuff because of the pain. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of this stuff that it's really complicated, and it would take a long time to get all into. But so these colonists, they'll all have like little stories, and you can hover over these and read, you know, what they were and what kind of benefits. One of the mods I use, they try to balance some of these that are otherwise very negative. Let me see if I can find an example. Maybe it's this one. No. We don't have a pyromaniac. Damn it. Of all the times that you don't want one, we don't have one. So I'm going to pick one of these dead-end clones and just randomize until I can show you just that one trait. Well, I'll use this one instead. So in the normal game, in the vanilla game, chemical interest, it just means the pawn, they are interested in experimenting with drugs, essentially. And because of that, they, in extreme situations of stress, they might like go on a drug binge. Like they might drink a bunch of beers or smoke a bunch of, it's called smokeleaf in this game. It's standard for pot. And the thing though is this mod, it actually gives you some kind of positive to having a negative trait like this. So in this case, like, because they have this sort of knowledge of these substances, they get a little bit of a medical boost. Nothing great, but like, hey, they know, oh, you know, if I smoke that, it makes my achy neck feel better. So they have like a little bit of knowledge of medical stuff just because of their chemical interest. And they also have a little bit of plant knowledge because, like, you know, harvesting buds or the psychedelic plants that are in the game that are used for like brewing the peyote or the mescaline. I can't remember what that stuff is supposed to stand for. But there's substances like that in this game where, so, you know, lore wise, that's what this mod tries to kind of argue, that hey, they would know a little bit about plants because they, you know, they smoke them or whatever. I mean, it's goofy, but it is a nice different flavor for some of this stuff. I'm trying to see if there's any other ones that are kind of a negative. Yeah, I think this one normally it's just like the minus 35% global work speed, or maybe it's even a worse global work speed penalty. But I think that this mod, the benefit they give you from this colonist being a lazy pile of bones is they're less likely to have a nervous breakdown because they're just sort of like so apathetic and lazy. They're just like, oh, whatever, the world's gone to shit, but I'm gonna go back to bed or whatever. So I mean, I like this mod because it sort of makes some of these things. Here's a good one. Greedy. This is a negative trait because this pawn will have a debuff if other pawns have better rooms, like more pretty rooms. They have nicer stuff in them, and they'll get a pretty big debuff, like the worse the inequity gets. And so they can have like a mental breakdown because their buddy next door like is living in like a palace and they're living in like a shack or whatever. So one of the positives, the balance that this mod gave is they eat faster because they're like just scarfing it down like greedy pawn would, and they can carry more. So I mean, it's a nice trade-off. It's probably terrible for game balance, but I don't care. Anyways, so we have a bunch of pawns here that oh yeah, no medical. So it looks like out of all these pawns that we have, I'm just going to have to randomize until I get something a little bit more reasonable. Here's one, like staggeringly ugly. So their beauty is lower, and there can be like pawns that have a mean, like a personality trait where they'll make fun of this pawn and it causes problems in your colony. But this pawn, they know that they're not anything good to look at, so they're kind of like they're more skillful as far as their overall work speed, because they've sort of compromised in their life, making up for their lack of attractive features by being that much better at sweeping the floor or whatever task they do. They work a little bit faster, so that's a nice balance in my opinion. Now this pawn, it's not. She's not terrible. She's got a really nice shooting. Oh, and these flames, this is a whole other thing. Your pawns, some of them can have passions. So 2 flames is like they're very passionate about that subject. And so if you make art with this pawn, they'll get a mood buff because they're doing something they really, really like. And they also, they learn it faster and they increase in skill faster. And they'll make, the legendary artwork or whatever probably more often than a similar pawn of similar level would. I don't really know if that influences that, but I'm led to believe it does. These smaller flames, they still have an interest. They have a passion in these things. It's just not as bright. And so it's nice when you have, especially with your starting pawn in this kind of a scenario, it's nice when these passions are things they're going to be doing because they're the only one there to do them. And they need to shoot because they're going to be having raiders come, and they're only going to have a bow and arrow to fend them off. It would be nice if this was higher, or if they even had a passion in it, because they're going to be in hand-to-hand combat, even if it's like with squirrels and raccoons and things like that. Once the arrow hits and the thing doesn't die and it comes charging for you, like you get another shot of the arrow, but then it's on you and it's you versus that thing, and you got your knife and it's got its claws and its sharp little teeth, and it might not be able to kill you, but if you can't kill it, some of your cuts can get infected and then you can die from that. So construction, super tough that this is that low. Probably wouldn't want to use this pawn because of that, because not only are you going to fail a lot when you're like building a wooden wall and then you waste materials and then now you got to go cut down another tree or whatever to finish up that wall. There are certain items as you unlock them you wouldn't be able to make, and I think that the tribal they can make basic tables and basic stools. I have to get in the game and actually look, but there's possibly like a level for those, like a minimum, like maybe it's 3 or something. I don't know, but I'm hesitant to pick construction 1 because I'm afraid that I would hit that level and then my pawn is like not eating with the table, which is a meme in this game. Like everything's going great in your colony, and then one of your colonists, your pawns, they eat without a table. They get the -3 mood debuff because of it, and they go on a murderous rampage, and your whole colony burns down. And it's like a really common joke on the Reddit and just amongst the game community that my best friend died. I'm doing great. Ate without a table, gotta kill you. Like it's just like they will turn on a dime over sometimes the most little things, and you're like, no. It's so it I if I really cared enough, I would look it up right now and really know, but I'm just gonna sort of go in blind. Mining, this is okay for starting mining. I personally, in the very beginning, mining stuff, unless you have a high skill level, it takes too long. And so besides getting a little bit of still just for some like basic things that you need, I don't like to spend a lot of time like cutting into rock or still, because you're trying to meet the very, very most basic needs. Cooking is really nice. This would be a good level for a starting pawn in this scenario. Plants, I mean, it's low, but the mild passion is nice because you'll be planting plenty, and this is like, at least you have a point in it. So you would be that much quicker. They would fail less when they would harvest stuff. They would get less of the... It's not a critical failure, but it's like you get less than you should. Like maybe when you normally harvest berries, you would get 10, but you sort of screwed up, so you only get 7 or 8 or something like that. The game does have that as kind of a system into it. It has procs. So when you do certain actions, there's like a random number generated, like a dice roll, and based on a whole lot of different things. There's equations you can all go in and look up, and people have figured them all out as well, and they have whole guides on YouTube about this stuff. But when you harvest rice, every time you harvest a rice node that's ready to be harvested, there's a dice roll to see whether you get like the full amount you should get for it. Maybe you get a bonus from it. Maybe you get less than you normally would, or you just fail the whole thing. Like you somehow screwed it up so bad that all the rice is gone. And so at least having a point is nice, because you're that much closer to not being a total like fumbling fool when you're dealing with that kind of stuff. And early on, when you're harvesting a lot of berry plants, berry bushes, that's like, that stuff is abundant and it's around, and it's a really quick way to build up your plants before you plant your first, like for instance, rice, or the other typical crop is potatoes, depending on soil. Like if you have poor to like okay soil, so people they'll plant potatoes sometimes. But if you have okay soil to sometimes rich soil, people plant rice, because it will grow really fast, and then you can plant it again and again and again. It's like very labor intensive once you start doing that. So once you have enough set aside, then you plant corn, which is more like a long-term thing, but it yields way more per harvest. So it's a better time investment. But in the beginning, you can't bank on that, because you're sort of like, you're living for the day, and you got to produce right away, depending on your map. Like this map, I could make once I have maybe my first rice harvest, I can go to like a much more productive crop, and there's still going to be lots of food, so likely, as long as I don't die from other reasons. Crafting being high is nice, because you got to make like bows and all those kinds of things. All this stuff is okay. That low construction, it bothers me, and being so ugly is it's not great. But careful shooter, it's a really nice trait ultimately. Once you get like some sniper rifles, for instance. Having a careful shooter who's a sniper is pretty nice, because they can reload their weapon quickly, because they have that weapon handling. By the way, I'm using Combat Extended mod, which probably really makes a lot of this stuff weird and foreign to vanilla players or players that play without that mod. That mod, a lot of people don't like it for various reasons, but I like it because it adds some realism to the game. It does make some goofy stuff too, but careful shooter is nice. But the problem is, in the very beginning, when it's just a single pawn and all you have is like a short bow, you don't want to be sitting there like aiming just perfectly with this crappy little arrow, and then the raider with a wood club comes up and bangs you over the head, and then you're dead. You lost because like you were aiming up the perfect shot when you should have just like plunked them off as quickly as you could. It's still a good trait though, but it's maybe not ideal to like having this kind of a tribal start, because you want to fire quickly sometimes, to, if anything, to suppress the enemy, and make them sort of slow down in certain circumstances. Slothful, also not a good trait. It is nice to have the lower mental break threshold, but in the very beginning, when you have nothing, your colonist gets this buff that's called like low expectations, because like literally you're just like some naked person out in the wilderness. And so you're like, well, shit, I survived today. That was good. Like I survived for another day. You have like such low expectations. The fact that you make it through another day is enough. This is kind of nice to show. You can have colonists that have a drug dependence. So here we are. I started this whole thing. We're talking about, hey, yay, we decriminalize marijuana in Arizona, recreational, hooray. And then you actually have a colonist that will like become dependent on smokeleaf, alcohol. There are harder drugs. There's like I forget what it's called. It's called Wake Up. It's meant to be like methamphetamine or speed or whatever. There is yayo, which is like cocaine. Something called Go Juice, which it would be like some kind of a drink that the military concocts to make their soldiers into like killing machines, but they'll die if they don't, if you don't keep using it. The withdrawals will kill you, kind of a thing. It's sort of like anybody that's a fan of Deep Space Nine, Star Trek. It'd be like Ketracel White for the Jem'Hadar. But Ketracel White doesn't make them like super quick and agile or whatever, but they're dependent on it, and if they don't have it, they'll die. But it would be like Ketracel White, except it makes them like that much more deadly. Maybe it does. Maybe that's in the lore of DS9, and I just don't know. I'm not like a super fan of Star Trek or whatever, but it's just similar to that concept. And there are some other drugs in this game that are pretty heinous, but I won't even get into all that because here we are still stuck on a character page. This trait, this colonist won't use drugs even if you set up a condition where they should. I will say, and it sounds crazy, and I have my own feelings about this too, because even though I'm like, yay, recreational weed passed, I think there are dangers with drugs, with anything out of moderation, and but in this game, it makes sense for some of the lower key stuff, like alcohol, like smokeleaf, maybe Wake Up in certain circumstances. There are addiction levels for those based on how frequently the colonist uses them. So if you know what the time limit is between uses, you can set up your colonist to, like, if they suddenly have something that really upsets them, they will go to like the most safe thing for them to use that's not going to get them addicted as easily, which I think in this case is smokeleaf. But the problem with smokeleaf is it makes them very hungry, and it makes them move around slow and sleepy. Imagine that. So it can be an issue where, like, suddenly if you're raided and your colonist is like stoned, good luck. And alcohol can be a one. Like, you can have them drink a beer, and they can get a little bit of a buzz, and that can even be something where if you're going into battle, it gives a little bit of a boost to your pain threshold for the colonists, so they don't like get knocked down as easy, or they can keep fighting when they otherwise wouldn't be able to. One of the best items in the game as far as drugs go is the psychite tea. That stuff, once I can grow it and make some, and I like to have one of those on every single colonist, and they will use it like just sort of if they're kind of bordering on a mental break and they need something to kind of give them relief, and it's not very addictive, and even if it is, it's not like they don't freak out if they're having withdrawal from it. They have a debuff that's kind of rough, but it's manageable, unlike some of the other debuffs on some of the other drugs. It's like you gotta literally like lock them in a room, and they like freak out, and they like bang themselves against the doors and hurt themselves and all kinds of crazy stuff. But just like real life, unfortunately. This colonist is they're a teetotaler, which they will never use that substance. There are ways, I think, with some of the mods I have where you can like force it to happen, but I don't do it because it's sort of in violation of that trait. So I don't want to like overstep that much where you're clearly circumventing what's meant to be something for balance. And they're jealous too, which is like not a terrible trait as if you know how to like manage it. But I don't like the teetotaler very much. They're missing crafting. So randomize, and I'm just going to randomize quickly now and like sort of skim these as I'm looking at them. This one isn't terrible. A couple things I don't like is they're a body purist. So if you ever get to the point where like they need another heart, they need a heart transplant, you got to use a real heart. You can't use a bionic one. And that becomes an issue because then where are you getting that heart from? And this a human heart is not as good as a bionic one. So if you're going to be doing that kind of a change, you'd want to put a bionic one in anyways. There are like, you can get like these death claw type things where your colonist turns their arms into like, they can be like hands, but then they can switch them into like blades or whatever. So there's all kinds of like modifications and there's some colonists that it's called transhumanists. They want all that stuff. So I don't like him because of that. I mean, this is one of the things you can randomize, but you, at a certain point you need to pick something. This one's not bad. She's young. So, if we don't die right away, she would have a long life. Her stuff is not great, but it's kind of nice that she is a little bit better of a melee fighter, because typically with a bow and arrow, you don't stop whatever comes at you the very first time anyways, so you do wind up melee fighting. Construction, nice to have that, sort of that level 3, and already has a minor interest in it. Plants, I mean, going to be great right off the bat. Crafting, solid, so that's good. Artistic, we don't care about. Medical, it's low, but having that little bit of a burning interest in it, that's great. And the other stuff, the low socials, I mean, it'd be nice if when you finally do catch a prisoner and you're trying to recruit them, if social was higher, so that you could do it faster. But you still can wear them down, and it doesn't really matter if it's a low number, because you have the time as long as you don't die in the meantime. Mining is sort of low. Cooking is kind of low. This is rough. These two being so low. Mining less so, but the cooking being low is trouble. At least it's a point, though. At least it's a pretty dramatic drop in food poisoning, even though there's still a high chance of food poisoning. So I'm going to pick this colonist. The chemical interest, it's not, unless you are really mismanaging their mood, they typically won't go on the drug binges. Too smart is a good trait generally, but it does increase the chance they'll have a mental break. So it's tough in this kind of a scenario, but it's doable, and it's nice that they learn like faster. So, and we definitely need that for some of these traits. So I'm going to pick this colonist. Colonist is named Gray Mongoose, and we're tribal, so I will leave that as a name. I think it's cool. I don't think I put any kind of flavor text for the start. Maybe I did. I can't even remember. This is a custom scenario, but the only reason it's customized is because I wanted to remove some of the annoying random events that pop up that I never do anyways. It will be like, oh, our person is trapped in this nearby colony, go and rescue them. And I'm like, dude, I'm standing here with a bow, like a piece of wood with a string, and I'm like flinging like these wooden arrows at stuff. Like, I'm not rescuing anything. So and this will take forever. Sorry, I have this installed on like an older hard drive, not an SSD, so it's going to be like long load times. And when I get more sensible about streaming and everything, I'll think those things through. But for just kind of going and getting my feet wet, this is how it goes. Now, this is one of my mods, and I don't really like this because I don't know what the differences are. I guess I'll just pick democracy. We're a democracy of one person, so it's like a tyranny anyways. This stuff can remain the way it is. But ultimately, like with this turned on, your colonists can elect mayor, and they can have a mayor office, and the colonists can go and talk to the mayor, and it gives a mood buff because, they feel like they've been heard, and all kinds of goofy stuff. So we'll hit OK. Let's see, how are we set up here? this is our map, and man, right, that's really lucky. I mean, geez. It's nice to build towards the middle of the map because when raids show up, they typically show, at least earlier game, they show up on the borders of the map, and then they have to walk to wherever the middle is. So if you like built a colony right here, if a raid pops up right here or whatever, unless you've like walled it off and they decide to walk all the way around, which the AI will do. It's a way that people like can be smart and sort of play the AI against itself. But if a raid pops up right here and you only have like a tiny little colony going, they're right on you, and you might be over here like doing some kind of a job, and they're lighting stuff on fire, and it causes problems. So it's nice to build towards the middle when you can, and it's also nice, and like much more advanced players would look at stuff in this map and they'd be like, oh, he should do this or he should do that. Like people will take an area like this. They probably wouldn't use this one because of this sort of swampy stuff here, but they would like wall this in, and then they could like carve up into here a little bit, or even just smooth this out and wall it off and put a door on it and put a roof up. And there they have like a really rudimentary bedroom, and then they have like this whole huge open space walled in, and then they kind of like seal off some of it and start cutting things out, and then they can put like their stockpile in there under a roof so their stuff doesn't decay. So it's not a bad, like people do that kind of stuff where like they're like, oh, cool, I could enclose this, or they'll look at the broader shape of things, and really good players will know like, oh, I can build. It's called the kill boxes, where it sort of like funnels enemies into like an area where they just get destroyed typically. I do have a mod. I think this is what is doing this. It's called like Real Ruins. If I remember that right, and it will leave like bits and pieces from other people's playthroughs, like actual players. It sort of takes the API from your gameplay, from what I understand, or something like that, and it will. Sometimes you'll find like really intact settlements, and it kind of gives you an unfair advantage, I think, in some instances. Especially though, there will be like these really ornate artworks or things that are really valuable. But it can have disastrous effects too, where like you might have some enclosed room and you go up to it and open it up, and there's like some badass droid in there that just kills you. So I mean, I don't see anything along those lines, as far as like, you know, you would just have this structure right here, but maybe like one little part of it would be closed off, and then you sort of pop it open and there's some kind of a fun surprise in there that's not so fun. What's cool though is in the very beginning, in this scenario, in this situation, what I don't like is this right here. All the terrain in this game, it has like movement speed. So if you're going over like marshy soil, if you see down at the bottom left, I gotta hover my mouse over it, so but like down in this area, when you hover over it, it says walk speed 48%. So you move like twice as slow when you it takes you like twice as long to walk through this because it's marshy. It is very fertile though, like 100%. So stuff will grow there fine, but like you don't want to be walking back and forth through that all the time because it will really slow your workflow down. The other thing is this stuff right here is an actual marsh, and this is a 30% walk speed. So if we build like more or less right in the middle of this map, then we like, depending on how far and how like what shape we build our colony in and all kinds of stuff, these can either be a help or a hindrance. Like what's nice about these is if we sort of like set it up right, and I don't know if I'm a skilled enough player to do it, but you can set it up to where if there was like a kill box, like if there was like a turret right here, and then your colony is sort of set up in a way that one of the only openings that an enemy would want to walk through, if they aren't using the more advanced AI that actually sort of like tries to go around these simple defensive measures, they would like walk right down, and then they'd hit this marsh and they would slow way down, and then that turret is just like unloading on them. So that's like a good player of this game will see these kinds of things, or they'll see shapes, and they'll know like how to build things and how to wall things off and how to like set things up in just a way that the enemy, any enemies that come into the map, you sort of make it to where they're easy to kill. Now, the thing about this very middle area that's awesome, I mean, this is just an enormous amount of fertile soil. That's this dark colored soil. And if I hover over it, if you see down at the bottom left, rich soil, walk speed 87, which is normal for just sort of like the normal ground is 87. Unless you pave it, then there can be like boost to the movement speed. But look at the fertility, 140%. So this is the kind of stuff you grow rice in this, and like, boom, it's ready. It's like, boom, it's ready. It's ready. It's like rice will grow so fast in this kind of stuff. There are faster ways to grow crops as well. There's hydroponics and all that kind of stuff. But being tribal, we are like light years away from all that stuff. This is a lot. Of course, it's a rainforest, so I'm picking like a biome that's like really easy. So I don't know why I'm surprised. But even to sort of, a lot of times when you have this stuff, it will be sort of like off, tucked away, and you might have like a patch here, and then like a patch over here. Like you might have it on your map, but like this is like, holy crap, this is like the breadbasket of this RimWorld. It could be. Like if this was all under cultivation and you had like good planters working this, I mean, you could produce just like gobs of food. So what's nice is it's central, so you could build around this somehow, and then like as your colonists are working it, like maybe you have their bedrooms right here. I'm just picking spots, like I don't really know how I'd lay all this out, but let's say their bedrooms are right here. So they get out in the morning and they do their thing, they eat and all that stuff, and then whatever colonist has the duty, or colonist or pawns, they have the duty of harvesting all this or working this. They get to work and do all that, and maybe they're harvesting some, and then you have hauler pawns coming along and taking it into like a safe environment where it doesn't decay as fast, and then you have a pawn that's cooking all this food and making it into whatever. So if you build your structures to be doing all this around this hub, it becomes like a quick workflow as your pawns are moving back and forth between everything, because they are it's not all like spread all out into weird crazy stuff, and so you're sort of like compromising where you're like, oh, the only decent amount of rich soil I have is over here, so I might as well wall this in and I'm going to start my little deal over here. But then you're right against the edge of the map, which is maybe a bad thing. So having this in the middle is like, boy, if we can survive for a while and even get like a couple more pawns, we could be set for food. The problem is with this is when you leave a huge chunk of that middle space open, however I would plot it out, then that means you're building along the periphery of it, and that means like you might have pawns that are sort of clustered over here for some reason, and then the attack comes from this way, and they're having to sort of like traverse this whole central open area until they get to the perimeter of your colony, which is more susceptible. I think like you would definitely need like walls and just some kind of a way to do a kill box with these marsh. But I don't know if I'm good enough to do that kind of stuff. I've never really pushed myself in the way that like I learn the best ways to do all that. I watch videos and stuff, but it's very difficult. Anyways, so what I'm probably going to do in the very short term, and this is sort of unfair that we have all these beds everywhere. If I look at them, some of these are probably really good. You'll find like masterwork ones in some of the stuff. Well, these are all wooden too, so not a big deal. Likely what I'll do is I will that double one is nice because you do need double beds in the very early beginning. When you get a second colonist, if they fall in love and they want to have a relationship, they'll want to sleep in the same bed, in the same bedroom. And if you only have a single bed, then you're having to spend some time and some materials making a double bed. So that is really nice to have that, but it's sort of like an unfair thing that it's there. Ooh, there is a snake next to it. Obviously it's wooden, it's awful quality, so it's not like, oh yay, but and it's not, so it's like, hey, it's not that unfair that I have this to start with. As a tribal member, though, it is unfair because we're not able to make furniture like that. We make bedrolls out of cloth or animal hides, and beds, even the worst bed, is better than that kind of stuff. Maybe not like the really plush and nice animal hide beds, but generally, like if I was just going to make an animal hide bed out of really basic stuff, this bed would be better than it, even though it's awful. So what I'm probably going to do, just because this is a path of least resistance for the time being, hey, we already got this here, and this is a granite even. Wow. So that's nice. There's not very much of it, but like, hey, we got like, this is kind of considered, there's a guide all about this. This is sort of considered like the minimum size of a bedroom. If you put like high quality enough stuff in it, it'll bump its level. Like they have, you can enable one of these tools down here, and you can see the beauty and the wealth of a room. And a room is any like walled-in structure that has a door. The door could be open all the time if you wanted it to, but it would still be considered a room in here if there was a wall and a door here, or this wall and a door here, or doors on both sides, whatever. But this is sort of like the 3x3 interior dimension. It's kind of a minimum size that you can make a bedroom, and And if you do it right, it sort of is like, it becomes a mediocre bedroom, or maybe like just a dull or a plain kind of a bedroom. And your colonists won't have a mood buff, but they won't have a mood debuff. So, I mean, I'm going to take advantage of that because I've already got like all these walls pre-made. I can just throw some wooden doors and just patch into this area with wood, which is abundant beyond belief. Of course, it's a rainforest map. And what I'm thinking, just on the very early look of this, is out in this direction, it's just sort of plain ground, and you can grow in this stuff just fine, and yeah, even rice. But because I'm living in freaking the Nile Crescent or whatever it's called, just all this rich soil, it just kind of makes sense to build a bedroom here, and then possibly build like some kind of a larger structure here to be our indoor stockpile, and to ultimately it could merge into kind of like a short-term kitchen, and then with an attached dining area, like a recreational room, like a dual-purpose sort of a thing. And then in a more longer-term move, like as if we survive that long, then we're potentially like really figuring out a real master layout for how we want this to be set up. Because right now we are like, I do this start to where there's like no really the serious health issues, and you don't have like I forget the cryogenic sleep sickness that the crash landed colonists can have. But your mood's like okay. This will start going down a lot though, especially because I'm naked, I'm sweaty. I do have a temperature mod enabled, and once I complete a room, it will show you what the interior, like a heat map of what that interior space is. And right now it's only 81 out, which is not bad. But if like we got into the summer and it was really hot, your colonist, based on the clothing they're wearing, what is this under again? I can't even remember. Is it stats? I think it's why am I not seeing this? Did this move, or am I just like not remembering and looking in the wrong place? I'm looking for what their temperature, their ability, like, oh, maybe it's under this tab. Yeah. So right now, obviously we have nothing. And this is showing if you're like standing stark naked out in the wilderness and it's 81 degrees outside, you might be a little uncomfortable because you have that sun right on your skin and you might be getting a sunburn or whatever eventually. Like, you're not out in like the super like Death Valley and it's like 1,000,000 degrees outside, but you have no insulation for your body. Like, if it gets a little bit colder than 61, you're going to be like shivering. If it gets warmer than 79, you're going to be sweating a little bit in this humid kind of environment too, since this is a rainforest. Even though there's not really like a humidity mechanic per se, there is certain weather stuff that does have a bearing on the gameplay, but not in the way of like comfort for the colonists. As far as like it feeling humid, if it rains, some of them don't like being out in the rain, some of them do. Some of them are like, yay, we're in the rain, and they're like flopping around playing in it probably. But some of them are like, oh, this sucks to be out here, I don't like to be wet. Anyways, so he has or she, I'm sorry, she has like no clothing on, so she's hot, but she's fine. This is a temperate rainforest, so it's not too extreme. And so what we're gonna do is right off the bat, the hierarchy of survival: food, shelter, water. And right off the bat, I mean, look, we have a few berry bushes right in this general vicinity. We have a whole patch over here. I thought I saw. Oh yeah, here's one. You're essentially, when you're first starting off and you're kind of thinking, oh, maybe I'll build here and I'll sort of start in this general area. You look in like a radius, what's in the immediate vicinity of your colony that can be used as like an immediate resource, and you try to like think, how will this workflow work to where we're getting the most done we can without just getting bogged down on any one thing. And so we have some like quick food that can last a while if we're not using it right away. And we can eat raw, and it doesn't give us food poisoning. Now, even though we have multiple berry bushes, these don't tide you over for very long, because like once you harvest them and eat them, they don't come back for a while. So you do, in the meantime, you need to make yourself some kind of way to go kill really small prey. So you can make like simple meals out of the meat and start leveling your cooking and hopefully not getting food poisoning. And you can also, and then you start to plant a little bit, like ideally enough to get you by, but not enough to bog you down in so much work that you're not able to do some of the other stuff that you need to do. It's hard to balance all this stuff, especially for a player like me that's not very skilled at this. That's why like a rainforest start is nice for somebody like me, because it's like, yeah, it's easy mode, but I kind of need it with being naked and tribal level and all this sort of stuff. So we want to right off the bat, even though food is number one, like we have food around, that need is met. Shelter. Well, here's most rudimentary kind of shelter. Some players in their very first day, they just sleep on the ground. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's like all kinds of different approaches to how to do this, and maybe I do it the wrong way. So like, don't take it as what I say as like really knowing anything. Just talking through what I do. So we'll handle shelter, and that will take a good part of our day, because we have to cut down all these trees in here. Even if they don't give us wood, some of these might not be mature enough. Hopefully they all will give us something. This one might not be. There is a threshold, I forget what it is, where like if you cut a tree at a certain point, it won't give you anything, but you do have to cut them. So when you enclose this and put a roof, like obviously you would need that tree out of the way. So we're going to get rid of these trees first off, and then anything like really close nearby here, any trees that are close to being fully mature or they are fully mature, we're going to cut it down, and we're going to like we're going to patch this wall, build a door, and build a door. And doors are expensive. They cost 25 supply, or 25 whatever the material you're using. So walls are nice because they only take 5 material. But it's nice to have, since I have this opening already here, and there's already like a big old gap right here, I might as well put a door on each side, just because then the workflow, like if I'm coming out here to plant something, or I say me like it's me, but it's just, if this pawn comes out here to plant stuff, they can also pop out this way and use whatever is in this building, which is probably going to be a basic butcher, kitchen, rudimentary dining area with some recreation. Do we have any? Not seeing any heal root. That's problematic. There is a plant in this game for healing. Uh-oh. Shit. That's not good. Wow, look at all. See, here's that mod. Here's a whole bunch of wood. I typically, because I don't like to just get a huge jump in my colony's wealth from stuff like this, I leave that stuff. And if it decays out in the open, oh well. And if all these beds decay, even though I'm going to have more colonists join, if I'm lucky enough to survive, and I'll need beds, I'll probably be making like bedrolls, or maybe I'll have furniture researched by then. So I'm not going to, like, besides this double bed, I'm not going to save this, or even these ones. If I was really anal about it, and maybe in some cases it's worth it, not this far away, I don't think, but like you could come down here and dismantle all these and then haul the wood back. You could break these into wood, or you could dismantle them and carry them one by one back if you were going to use them later. But it doesn't really make sense to do that. So there's a couple things also to go in, and part of this is the way my mods are set up. Normally in RimWorld, I think you have this this setup where you can like tell your colonists, yeah, I want you to do that, or no, I don't want you to do that. Yeah or no. This is sort of like a binary light, or like a switch, on and off, a light switch. The problem with that, though, is when you have a whole bunch of tasks assigned, all at kind of like the same priority level, your colonist or your pawn can, like, they'll move here, they'll do one little thing, then they'll come back here, do one little thing, then they like move in really inefficient ways. They're always like back and forth between stuff, and you want, if possible, to try to like prioritize these in a way where the pawn is, they will work on a certain task and get it done, and then the next thing they do is a logical sequence. Like they cut some trees down, and then the next priority is to haul. So once they've finished their plant cutting that you designated them to do, then they're not just running off and going and cooking a meal and then coming back and hauling the stuff. They actually they cut the last tree down, and then they pick up the full amount of wood they can carry, and they go take it to your stockpile. And so they're not losing, like making a bunch of extra trips. That's a big thing in this game, is getting the foot traffic, the workflow for your pawns to go smoothly, and it can be really hard. And I'm not saying I'm great at it, but I do. One of the things that helps. Normally, when you click these, it'll give you up to 4 priority levels, so you can say, hey, number 4, I don't care about that. Hey, number 1, I really care about that. Like you would say firefight, you want it number 1, because if your colony's on fire, you want every single colonist to drop what they're doing, ideally, and go and put that fire out. Makes sense. And like if you have a doctor, you don't want him to go run off to like sweep the floor when you have like a critical patient that needs like immediate care. You want that to be like one of the highest priorities for your doctor pawn. And so on. Like there's all these different things. So you sort of, once you get more pawns and they have different skill levels, you're sort of specializing them into what they do. But you have to be careful and really understand, like, if they're going to be doing it efficiently the way you set it up. Because even if you do the 1 through 4, it's almost not enough granularity. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Like it's not granular enough to really specify the correct order that they do stuff in. So I got a mod, and a lot of people use this, where it actually does it 1 through 9. And so what I do is, like, there's obvious ones, firefight, you typically want to be 1. But I found from playing with this mod after a long time, the easiest way to do it, to set it up to where I can get it into like an efficient workflow, and I still have to tweak it some once you get it running, I go through every one of these possibilities, and I think, and a lot of it's to do with like how capable they are of it, how needed it is for whatever situation you're in. But I think, do I even want them to do that? Do I want them to do that at the very lowest priority? Like if there was nothing else on the whole map they could be doing, they would go and do this. Well, that's what a number 9 stands for. That's for the stuff where you just don't want the pawn to be standing around. Hey, if they can go and mine something, even if they have the worst mining level of all your pawns, they're going to go whack on something and at least get a little bit of skill gain and maybe bring some ore back or something. It's not a great thing when you get to the point to where pawns aren't very busy doing stuff they're really good at, but at least you have them do something. So this pawn, because of our situation, we're not going to be managing as a mod as well. Probably one I won't really use, but I just have it from one of the other things that I have going enabled in this playthrough. Research, we're not going to be doing that for sure. Like we're going to be like struggling to even like find enough food and not get killed by the raids that come for us. Clean is an important one, especially when you're if you're the only pawn cooking, and you want to keep the cooking area clean. So it also reduces food poisoning chance, having a clean kitchen, and you never want to have your butcher table in the same area as your kitchen, because they will cross-contamination, and then you get higher food poisoning chance. All people that play a lot of RimWorld know all this stuff. This is all like, there's a million guides how to get started in this game and that talk all about these kinds of things and are way more concise and useful and helpful than I could ever be. I'm not the kind of person that can be very concise when I explain stuff, and so I'm not somebody that's going to be making tutorials for games anytime soon. Let me say that, let me say it that way. Not that I wouldn't like to, but I'm just not, it's not a real strong skill set of mine to be like, here's how, step number 1, step number 2, like just motor through it and really help somebody. I'm going to sit there and explain something to death for like 15 minutes and not even, a person's like, what is this person even talking about? And they tuned out long ago. Like that's just the kind of person I am. So, I mean, maybe some of the explanations still help people, but or at least they can say, hey, you made this mistake because you're thinking along this lines, but what you really need to do here is this. Like there are people that are so much better at this game. I'm sure they could like watch as I play and see all kinds of mistakes that I make. So we obviously want him to stop whatever he does and goes to put out any fires that start in our colony. I'll talk more about what is our colony and how we sort of define the boundary of it later. Patient, that was if like he's sick or he has a wound that he treated himself because he's by himself. If he has a patient at a low priority, meaning like he's high priority is the lower number, he's more likely to go and just lay in bed until he gets better. She, I keep saying he, it's a she. I should have changed her name to like a more feminized name just so I could remember that, because I'll keep messing that up. So the doctor one, and I should say, so okay, I go through every one of these, and I'll explain what all these are to some extent as I talk about as I go through them. But I sort of look and I'm like, okay, this guy, he's got a passion for growing, and I really need him to be growing stuff. So I tend to think of it like anything that I'm not going to do, I just leave blank. Anything that I'm not good at, but I could do down the line. And in this case, he has a burning passion for this, but he's not going to be doing, or she's not going to be doing this anytime soon. So I put it on 9, but that essentially just means like that's the lowest level of going to do that, and this pawn will never do that, but it's just a placekeeper almost. Now mining, you can see, so this red box that's around it, that means that this pawn is terrible at doing that. They have a 2 out of 20. I think when they get to 3 skill level, that red box goes away. That just means that this pawn is going to really struggle doing this until they get their skill up a little bit more. So most of the skills that are in red, like red boxes, I put to a 9 just to sort of think like this pawn's not that good at that, so they probably shouldn't be doing it if it can be helped. Now, clearly, this pawn needs to cook at some point. Maybe not right away with those berries around, but at some point, this pawn needs to cook. Now, there are players, they will like eat animals raw, and they'll eat corpses of humans and be cannibalism and all this kind of stuff. And those are viable strategies, and that's probably why I struggle so much with the way I play, because I try not to do that sort of stuff. I try to actually get the colonists to the point to where they cook the food and then they eat a cooked meal, even if it's a simple meal, and maybe they get food poisoning from it. But I try to at least get them to the point where they're doing that, because that does, if the colonist eats, I think even if they eat berries, which are like a relatively safe food, if they eat it raw, I think they get a minor debuff. Ate raw food. I'm not sure about that. Maybe the berries don't cause that debuff, but do have the food poisoning chance. That might be the quirk about the berries. But like your colonists can eat rice, uncooked rice, like not steamed. It's just like hard granules of rice, and they could eat it. Any of us could, if you think. Like we could go grab a handful of rice and stuff it in our mouth and chew, and it would be like a very unpleasant experience. But we could chew, like grind it up to a pulp in our mouth and swallow it, and it would give us some nourishment and keep us going. But you can imagine, like, if you were having to do that every day, what a pain it would become. And so your colonists will get debuffs from eating meals like that. So it takes that away, even if they only make the most basic meal. Like if you think about, I have a little handful of rice that I harvested from this plant that I planted. I'm gonna take a little bowl of water and stick the rice in it and boil the water, and voila, I have steamed rice. And boy, that would be a very plain and unappetizing thing to eat to most of us. But if you were this pawn, this woman that's out there alone and just has nothing, like it might taste like the best thing ever. Like holy shit, that steamed rice is amazing. So that's how this game kind of like the creator of this game and a lot of the development of it. Those were sort of like those were I think incremental changes, things that are implemented over time and with like player feedback, and as he watched people play this game and the things they would do and the kind of stuff that emerged out of it. So it's a very creative game, very complex and deep as far as some of that stuff goes. Anyways, back to the work screen. So definitely we want this person cooking, but they're not that great at it. So I'll put it at an 8, just to sort of show me that, like, yes, this pawn needs to do this, but they're really miserable at doing it. They have low skill level. Entertainment, I mean, I could leave it at 9, but there's not going to be any guests to entertain for a long time. I have a mod on where guests will arrive and they'll stay, and sometimes they'll leave gifts and stuff, but I don't even like that mod, because they leave you like gold, and then you're like, great, now we're gonna have a big raid against us, thanks a lot. Warden and Jailer, these are they need to be done, because if we capture stuff, we don't want to like go run. If we capture a raider, we don't want to go run off and clean stuff when that raider is sitting there in their cell starving. So Warden needs to be like done, and it needs to have some priority. I think Jailer is the this is a mod that you can make your prisoners work if you're within a vicinity of them, and this is one of the war crimes thing I was talking about when I'm like, this game can be really screwed up. Once you capture the prisoners, instead of recruiting them, you can essentially like you shackle them, and you can like have them come out into an area and do simple tasks, like they could harvest your rice while you have one pawn standing there while like 3 or 4 prisoners are doing the labor. Pretty dark, right? But that's what's cool about this game, is it's just like open-ended. There's all kinds of stuff that people either can do just in the base vanilla game or with the DLC, or people have modded in, and the creator of this of RimWorld, he's very supportive of the modding community and just the way people at first I think I've watched some GDC talks that he's given. GDC, if you don't know, is a game developer conference, and there's a lot of their presentations that these game developers do. They're put online, so really cool research if you're interested in video games. and the people that make them. You just like go and look at GDC online, and you can find on all over YouTube all these like keynote addresses that some of these like really cool game designers do, and they'll get up there and they'll explain like the whole process of developing their game and some of the challenges they face and the successes and all this kind of stuff. And if I remember correctly, the creator of RimWorld, in the very beginning, he was trying to like sort of make it more like a locked down thing a little bit. Like when players were asking for or doing certain things, he kind of had an impulse like, no, I don't want the game to work that way. But then I think pretty quickly he saw players doing just really quirky and cool stuff, and he changed his mind, like and then he was like, we're gonna this. Maybe from the very beginning he's been very open about it, I don't know. Like I seem to remember him sort of saying like he kind of made a little mistake in some ways of not really grasping the way that the game, like there's many things that started as mods in this game. Like if you play vanilla as like what would be called vanilla now, or even the DLC sort of vanilla version, there are many things in it that were mods of the original vanilla RimWorld. Like when the game first came out, it was very stripped down, rudimentary in some ways. The animations, like the graphics, I followed it from when I first saw like what he was making and the screenshots and stuff. I was like, wow, that's a really cool. It's we'll talk about a long rambling video, but this game is essentially like a reskinned, reconceptualized, stylized version of Dwarf Fortress, which is its own style of game. It's a colony builder, very similar premise, lots of quirky things, funny stories that emerge from it. It's a wonderful game, but the graphics are like, if you see without, there's ways people can put skins on them and make it more presentable. It's on Steam. It's a really cool thing, but that is a dense game. That is a game where like to learn the actual menus and the commands and to do things in that game, you have to be in my opinion, like watch tutorials and really be good at learning things step by step, and seeing beyond what looks like to most people that are younger. If they see Dwarf Fortress, like the way it is, just sort of the really basic characters, it looks like something from like an early 80s DOS game or something that you would play, where like the symbols on the keyboard, like the number symbol, the @ symbol, the pound symbol, like an exclamation point, like all of those, the game developers would like make a wall out of exclamation points and would make a switch out of the or the @ sign, like the symbol that you use when you write, your email address, so and so's name @gmail.com. That @ symbol, like that would be a switch, and then the door is a W, or what. They would just have some kind of a way that all these different these letters on the keyboard would represent items, and the screen, the interface, what you're looking at, it's sort of graphical in the sense that you're like looking at a monitor and you're seeing an image, but it's a very representational, like it's sort of similar, which is very cool about it, in my opinion. So the way that some writing systems, for instance, in like Mandarin or Japanese, I don't know a lot about those languages, to be honest, so I could be saying a bunch of BS right now. But the way the written forms, like the symbols, like there's a kind of a literal meaning and like sort of a writing system there as far as like constructing words with these symbols. But the symbols themselves, they stand for meanings, like they represent items or ideas. And then so it's not only just the symbols being in a combination that means a word. It's like this symbol means happy, and this symbol means young man, and this symbol means union, and when you put them together, it means like a happily newly married man or whatever. Like it's that would be the English way we would write that out. Happily newly married man. It would just be a few symbols, and I don't know if this is a real example, but as I understand it. And they would be representative of the concept, and it is writing. It's an abstract form that is representing some kind of other reality, and it's understood as such. But like from the West, when you're used to like a Romanized alphabet where we have like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and all that kind of stuff, our writing system is different, but it's still serving the same purpose, as far as like what you're doing when you're reading something or writing something down. But in Dwarf Fortress, the way that the interface works is very representational. Like all the little symbols and stuff. Like you have to be. I was born early enough in the '80s. I had a Commodore 64, was sort of like a hand-me-down computer that my parents sort of bought secondhand from my aunts and uncle. And I played the hell out of that thing. I played a lot of games on it, and they were cool games. I can't remember a lot. I mean, I was like 6 or 7 years old. I barely knew how to work the damn thing. But my dad was like, "Oh, that'd be cool if he had that." And of course, I mostly use it to game. But I learned to, type a little bit better and interface with the computer, be a little more comfortable with it. And even though like I wasn't like some prodigy the way some people are when they have computers at a young age. Now, if I see a game like Dwarf Fortress, a lot of people would look at that interface and go, "Ooh, look at that. That's like, what is that? That, how could somebody sit and stare at that and play that?" But it's something like, now it's not something I'd go out of my way to play. I'd much rather play RimWorld. But Dwarf Fortress is the grandfather of all these kinds of games. And Dwarf Fortress itself is probably based on a lot of stuff that I'm not even aware of. Interesting game to look into. But I bring all this up. I don't know. It just occurred to me to mention him. There's a YouTuber called Krug Smash. I think I'm saying that right. Krug Smash. He uploads these videos. They're typically really good. I forget what they're called. I'm so bad about. I like a lot of YouTube, and I watch stuff, but I don't know some of the stuff I should. Like there's big YouTubers or people that make really cool content for the games I like, and I have no idea. So I wish I could remember the details on his stuff, because his Dwarf Fortress videos are really cool, and he puts a lot of creativity and imagination into them. And he has a large enough community that people like send in artwork, like, because he'll explain like how his colony went and what all happened to it, and then people that like his videos, like some of them that are artistically inclined, they'll draw out like a little scene from one of the videos, and then he'll post them, and those visuals, and they really add to the story, because again, like Dwarf Fortress, the visual side of it as a game, it's not super appealing, but then he's like explaining it, he's telling the tale, and then these images come up, and it's a very accessible YouTube channel that way, and he's really good at what he does. I only bring that up, and I also want to mention, while I'm talking about Dwarf Fortress, just on this random tangent, there's he's famous. Lots of people probably know him. So it's funny that I'd even mention him, preaching to the choir for people that know this guy. But Nookrium, he does lots of really cool strategy and simulation games. And I like his style, his like more chill, like he's not nothing against it, but there are YouTubers that they're like, "Hey, how's it going, everybody?" Blah, 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 and they're like super. I mean, I'm talking more about like influencers, quote unquote influencers, that are like, they have really cool music in the background, and they're showing you like their badass crib, and they're getting in their Lambo and all this stuff, and it's just like all that side of YouTube. Good on those people that they're crushing it, and they're making their way in the world, and they're able to do such a cool thing with what they've created. But I do appreciate the like guys like Nucrium that will do Dwarf Fortress videos, or Krug Smash, like some of this more obscure stuff where it's some people might look past it, but it's really, really good. I don't even know why I'm talking about all this. So, okay, so yeah, he is our pawn, or she is she's has an interest in being a tailor, but we're not going to really have a lot of time to do that. We will want her to make like maybe some clothing for herself when she gets some skins, probably after. It's going to take us a while if we're killing like small animals. We definitely want a plant cut to be, because now I'm looking and saying, okay, tailor is something I want her to do before she does any art, which she wouldn't be doing anyways, but we definitely want tailor to be something that she's doing. Well, we definitely want her to go, and if something's ready to be harvested, you want that to be cut, because it can eventually rot on the before, if it doesn't get harvested in time. And even you want to get it cut before, in my opinion, you want to harvest everything and then you go back and you sow all the new seeds. So one of the problems, if you were to put these both at the same level, your pawn would go like harvest one thing and then like start putting seeds, and then go and run up here and harvest this thing and then start putting seeds, and it's like they would just be back and forth and back and forth. And so you need to pick one that you want to prioritize, and in this case, we want the plant cut prioritized, because when we're picking, like, chop these trees down, go and harvest these berry bushes, we want the pawn to go do that, not to go and start like planting rice or whatever. And I will tweak these more, but this is sort of how I figure out priorities. Now, growing and harvesting, like grabbing something to eat, I mean, getting the berries so that we cannot starve immediately, that's a high priority, but eventually we can sort of slow that down when we have a little bit of food built up. But construction, we need to be building some things before we go and plant rice plants, for instance. We don't want to like go and plant our whole field when we haven't even completed enclosing our bedroom. So we do want construction to be pretty important, but we can put construction at 6, and this can be even lower, as long as we're not going around and telling the pawn, okay, harvest, harvest, harvest. Well, then they're going to go run off and harvest. But as long as we bear in mind, like, build this stuff first, and then as we point things out to harvest, they'll go run off and harvest those. But it's what allows you to sort of still give control, even though your pawn is supposed to be kind of like automated and independent. You micromanage sort of their workflow to the point to where it sort of works for your immediate goals. Cooking is sort of like growing or planting, but in my opinion, because like if you have raw meat or even rice or berries, they can go bad. You want to cook before you're running off to go plant more stuff, or to even cut your plants. Now, when you don't have any food to cook, you don't worry that you have this 5. So we can pick another item that's sort of it's important, but it's also one of those kinds of things that it's unlikely that our pawn will be doing all the time. And in my opinion, that should be probably crafting, because when we need to make like more arrows, when we need to make really basic items, we want there to be a priority there, but we don't want to like be forsaking some of the really vital stuff that will be like our last priorities. Now, in my opinion, it's really important that whatever the levels are, if you're using this like these multiple level this mod, that clean, even though it's annoying when your pawn's like running around cleaning stuff that and you have other important things for them to do. When you only have one pawn, you need to put clean at a good priority so that they're keeping the kitchen clean at the very least. So they're not getting food poisoning, or you're reducing the chance that they get it. Haul is important, but I'm trying to think of how the workflow goes. We cut the plants are cut, but if we cut one plant, then we would try to haul it away. So that doesn't work. We want to cut all the plants and then haul them, because then once we've cut that last plant, we are near a big pile of like rice, let's say, and then our pawn's going to run up and grab as much of it as they can, all from these shared piles, and then take it in one big chunk instead of like one by one by one by one. So we definitely want haul to have more priority, or to have less priority than plant cut, and even grow. Like we want, once we plant those plants, once we cut those plants, we want to haul off all that food to wherever it needs to go, and then we can come back out and plant seeds. So that's kind of why those are in that order. Construction being a 6, then does that work still? What's the haul? I guess it works. Hunt is kind of along the lines of plant cut, almost like, but it can be a little less important, because you don't want to like pick an animal to hunt, and then your colonist like stops in the middle of doing something important and runs off to hunt it. Like, you don't want them to stop cutting plants. You typically don't want them to stop hauling that rice that you just harvested. So hunt needs to be at least higher than that stuff. And now that I've put it at 7, you got to decide, do I want my colonists to plant seeds before they go run off to go kill that squirrel or whatever? And I want the seeds to be planted first before we go run off and capture animal, like kill an animal. So I put cook at 5. I think that's good. Not thrilled that it's sharing the same level as plant cut, but we'll figure it out. Entertain, don't need to worry about it for the time being. Handle, don't need to worry about it for the time being. Jailer, we're not going to, in the very beginning, like be managing prisoners and all this stuff. Warden, we do need, what else is 8? 8 is hunt. So I'm going to leave Warden 8, and I'm going to make Hunt 9, because if you look at my other 9s, they're not like mine, which is a low skill of ours. We're not going to be doing a whole lot of it, just like really when we need some really basic stuff. But Hunt, we can go, put animals, and then as our pawn finishes other tasks and is completely free of stuff to do, they'll go run off and hunt an animal. And once they kill that animal, their haul is sort of a priority point to where they'll ideally pick the animal up that they just slaughtered. Basic is things like turning on and off light switches and moving furniture around, and just it's not super important, but you don't want it to just be like never being done. I would say, what is my number 8 level again? Yeah, because you're not going to be sewing stuff like all the time. So that, and you're not going to be like talking to the prisoner or bringing them food all the time. So you can be doing some basic stuff, and we'll see if that needs to be lower based on how things go when we actually get rolling here. Haul Plus, I believe this is from a mod. It's a really nice mod. So you can have in RimWorld, if you harvest these berries and they're laying on the ground, think of that as like a normal haul priority. The pawn who sort of like wants to do that job and is nearest to it will walk over, pick those berries up, and then go take them to your stockpile. But you can pick certain items to like prioritize and say, hey, right now go and pick this thing up. Like maybe you killed an enemy and they dropped a really nice gun, and you don't want it sitting out in the exposure. And because in the weapons mod I have, maybe it's in the normal game too, I don't even know. I've never played the vanilla version with weapons, as far as like vanilla weapons. Your gun, if you have a gun laying on the ground out here, it'll start to decay because it's out in the weather. It's out like, in the mud and the dirt. It's getting moist from the humidity in the air, so it will rust. So you'll see, like that's a nice rifle. We only have a 6-shooter or an auto pistol, like a 9mm or whatever the 45 would be. So you tell your pawn, hey, haul that right now. Go and pick that gun up and put it into where it's not out in the open and it's not going to be declining in its quality. And so Hall Plus, you want it to be pretty important. Like I would say you want it to be more important than clean, because you want, hey, drop the broom and go and pick that up right now. So you want Hall Plus to supersede all this stuff. And you got to think to yourself, like, am I going to be okay if I designate something, hey, pick this up right now, if they stop cooking, if they stop doing these other tasks? And in this case, like, yeah, all this other stuff I've set up, I want Hall Plus to be slightly more, have more priority. And bed rest is it's the same as patient. Patient is like if you have a doctor in your colony and another a pawn needs an operation or is sick or something, they will go and lay either in their bed or in a medical bed, and then the doctor, whoever that is, will come up and doctor them. And so that's if you set patient priority really low, your pawn will prioritize going and getting well over some of these other things, which is probably a good thing. Like it's typically, as you'd want like patient to be on 2, because if you have a doctor, which we do not, you don't want like your pawn like being hurt or having issues and running around cleaning stuff when, hey, go get in bed, let the doctor give you some medicine, and then that's what bed rest is. You want that to be a good priority as well, because you want your pawns to when they're hurt or when they have some kind of a health problem, they will try to rest until it goes away. Now, personally, I'm going to put this on 3 because I do want the chance. I think it works this way, where if you have these 2, like Hall Plus and bed rest, if they are resting in bed and I give a Hall, like a priority Hall job, they will get, even if they're on bed rest, they will get out and go and pick that thing up. Because there are items where it's like, oh, go and pick that up right now. I don't care that you're recovering from the flu or whatever, or you have a scratch that's almost healed, like go and pick that up now. So I think that will work. If not, I might have to make bed rest a little bit worse, and then I'd have to bump cleaning up because I don't want them to like go off and clean things instead of being on bed rest. But I'll leave bed rest at 3 for right now to see how the priority of Hall Plus is. I would put Hall Plus at 2, but then it screws up patient. And you want, of course, it'd be nice if patient was 1, because if they had a really serious issue or they needed something done, then they should go do it. But you definitely don't want them to, if there's a fire and it's all hands on deck, like you need your pawns to get out there and do their job. I'm going to put doctor at 1 as well. Obviously, this pawn is not really, doesn't have a good medical level, but they do have a minor passion in it. So, and we want, like, if we get hurt or if we have any kinds of issues, we're going to self-treat, which is our only option. It's just us. It's us against the world at this point. And we don't have any medicine, and that's one thing I noticed. I was like, where the hell is all the heal leaf in this map? I don't see any. So we are in deep trouble. We have, like, no... I don't know if there's something, like, wrong with a mod or something. Like, why is there no a heal leaf in this map? It's this little green plant, and it's sort of like herbal medicine is what it's supposed to be. And I will be damned if there's not a single one. There's something off. It's got to be, because like I think now maybe like if it's an ice sheet map or something, I wouldn't have any. But that's a bummer. I hope something's not screwed up because of one of the mods I'm using, because here I am like making this video and talking all this stuff and just going on and on and on and barely playing, and then we might have a serious problem. Let me see if I was going to make a growing zone, if is it even an option, or is it heal root right there? And it's a plant level 8, which we are not even close to. So this is super hard without that, because now it's like if we get an infection, we can self-treat, but we don't really have the doctor skill, and without herbal medicine, even with herbal medicine, if you have low doctor skill, but even with like sort of okay doctoring skill, you're kind of like touch and go, and especially if you're by yourself like this playthrough, you're probably going to die anyways because you're so weakened if a raid comes. But without any heal root, any little thing, we're going to die. So shit, that's a bummer. Maybe something is wrong, I don't know. I'm just going to play it anyways, and maybe we get lucky and can buy some off of a trader, or eventually we manage to survive long enough to grow some. It's pretty unlikely, but oh well. So there we go, doctor. Now because I did all this stuff, as he's not going to do, or she's not going to do anything if I unpause the game, because there's nothing really to do at this point. But what you have to do is you have to tell the game. It has this toggled, and I untoggle it because I don't like, as you start to build things and expand out, it will expand like what your pawns consider part of your base, and sometimes you don't want it to, because your pawns will like go around and clean stuff in your base, even if it's like outside. Like if I put a zone around here that says, hey, this is my base, she will come over here and sweep up this rock rubble. She'll like clean it all up. Which I don't need. I mean, this is just out in the middle of nothing. It doesn't matter. So I turn that off, and then you go into the zone menu, and I expand my homes area, and you can see like it just sort of picked an area at the start of this that's not really like, it doesn't really matter where it is. I'm going to put my my home colony right here for now, like just the bare outline of this actual structure. And this structure, we technically, because it's like a found structure, it's a ruin, we don't own it. So we I'm anybody that's new to the game, you can click on one tile, then you can hold shift, and you can either left click, or you can like push in like the hotkey. And then what this does is it makes this little flag, and then you click on a tile, like, and what you're telling the game right now is you are claiming ownership of these granite walls, this bed, this air vent. And now our colony wealth, if we played the game a little bit and we could look at a graph, our colony wealth went up some, because now we're not just she's not just a naked person out in the middle of nowhere. She's a naked person out in the middle of nowhere with this sort of remnants of a room and a bed, which is pretty nice for a tribal start like this. To actually, boom, you start off with a bed, and it's like right where you're going to build your bedroom anyways. So first priority right off the bat, and there's different ways you can do this as far as menus and things you choose. Like if you just click that, then you got to do it one by one. A really useful orders. A really useful one of these options, and this might be from a mod, I can't even keep it straight or remember anymore. There's an option to only chop mature trees, and this is really nice because there might be stuff around here that's like some really old tree, it's fully grown, and you get the most amount of wood that you probably would from it. And if you chop stuff that's not fully grown, you still get wood from it, like this one right here, this one. But if you notice, whatever this is behind here, it won't let me select it. And that's because that tree, it's only 9.5% grown. It's just like a little sapling. And so if you try to use the chop command, it won't do anything because there's not like an actual tree there to cut down. It's just like this little twig growing out of the ground. So what you have to do in that case is you cut the plant, and then it's gonna cut that out of there. And we have to do this because you need to clear any of the stuff. This one has to go as well. Anything that's adjacent to where you build a roof, it has to be tree free. So whether you're going to get wood from these or not, whether it's a good time to chop them based on their maturity, because we're going to enclose this right away and take care of at least having a place to sleep that's enclosed and shut off from the elements. We're going to cut these things that are immediately here. And now our colonist has two different orders to pick from. cut a whole bunch of things, and move this bed over into this corner. Ultimately, when I get things a little more set up, I'm going to wind up bringing this bed over here. But first of all, we have these orders set up, and our colonists would go and do this, but there's one more thing I'll do, and this is not really the right way to do this as far as like how people do this when they're really good at this game. Sorry, this is a 4x4 square, I meant to say. I said 3x3. Don't know why. 4x4. I just put a stockpile zone in here, so anything we cut, any of this wood or whatever, it'll like, the pawn will want to haul it to this area. And it doesn't matter as much for wood because it decays very slowly, but certain items you want to be in enclosed room. This is way too small of a room to enclose a lot of stuff. But if you had like really valuable things, berries that you don't want like an animal to run up and eat if you just left them on the ground right outside. Hey, maybe you want to leave them out there and the animal runs up and then you kill the animal. It's like a little bait thing. But generally, like, you put stuff in here that you want to preserve from the elements and also to avoid from any wildlife coming and eating it, like if it's like a food stuff. So now we set all of our work options up, and this pawn now is going to make a choice. Is she going to run up and grab this bed and plop it over here, or is she going to start cutting wood? Well, if you look, her basic, that's what moving furniture falls under. Her basic is 8, and her plant cut is 5. So she's going to mow through all these trees, and then she actually has haul of 6, and then she's going to take all those individual piles of wood and bring them into the stockpile, and then she'll move the bed. But I technically, I don't even know. I don't even want her to move the bed when she gets to that point. I'm going to wait until she hauls all the wood, and then I'm actually going to put in the instructions for building the walls and building in the roof. I can put the roof orders in now. It's under zone, I think. Yeah, build roof area. And all that we're going to do for the time being is just enclose our little room here. And you can see, like, when I just did that, now the game, it gives you this error message, hey, you can't build that roof because it's over a tree. And it means the way that this game does stuff, I think it even includes these 2 trees that are adjacent, but it definitely includes these ones. So if we hadn't told her to cut all this stuff already, and she was going to respond to the build the roof request, she would come in here and build some of this roof, and then she would stop to cut these trees down because they're in the way. But we want her to do that anyways, and so she's going to do that first because it's her priority list. And I looked in the very beginning because there's a lot more micromanaging for when you're first doing this stuff. I just play at the normal speed. Just to kind of, or I'm sorry, number 2. So she cuts stuff, and right off the bat, the game starts giving you like pop-ups to say, hey, you're missing this stuff, and it's like, yeah, no crap, we have like nothing. So, and you can see like the amount of wood she's getting, it's based both on the tree maturity, and how good her chopping skill is. Now, this is a little unfortunate because she's going to like build this roof up and leave these out here, and then she's going to run back out and get them. But there's some of that like really minor stuff that you just sort of let slide when you play this game, because otherwise you get like way too... because she has that construction priority, she's going to... repair all these damaged granite walls, but that's like not an important task. So I'm going to show like, hey, you go and haul this. And normally the pawn is going to finish whatever they were starting. So a way to break them of that is you just draft them and you undraft them. And now they reset to a new job. And of course the haul plus a priority, they're going to go grab this wood before they repair those walls. And now... I don't want her to waste all that time building that stuff. I'm going to go into structure, going to build a door here. I have just enough wood to build one door, and then enough wood to, maybe build a full wall here, but I'm going to build a second door. So what I'll do next is this vent is, it's useless to me as far as how I would use it. I mean, maybe I could like open it and close it when it's like hot and cold outside and stuff, but that's not really a good way. So I'll just deconstruct these because it's a little bit of steel, and we do need some steel in the start anyways. So we'll let her do this stuff, even though it's a little bit of a waste of time, just because she was already going on it. And now you see, like, typically I think the AI will prioritize these kinds of, this is a construction job, and then they'll go to this kind of a construction job. But again, I'm like, hey, stop doing that construction job, and I want you instead to haul. Now, steel can sit out in the elements and doesn't matter, but I still want her to haul this in there, so it's in like a grouped place. And now I don't really like her repairing those, so I'm going to have her... I think I'm going to have the doors kind of like that. No, I'll do it the other way. So now she has enough wood to do these two wall panels, but not enough to complete a second door. And this is another, I think this is a mod that I have that lets you do this. You can click on the pawn, and you can right click an item. Maybe this is vanilla too, but there's parts of this that I think are the mod changes. And so you click this, and now she's going to stop doing this construction job, and she's going to run over here and do this construction job. And you can click the one next to it, and also tell her, like, you hold shift and you click on that one, and now that added a second part to the queue. So this is a way where, like, especially if you want to micromanage and be very involved in the beginning, you need to. Oh, she botched her construction, but she did get the other part done. You need to be very like, do this now, do this now, do this, because otherwise she'll sit and do this kind of useless. I mean, this is good to do, but it's like, hey, there's more important stuff to do. So what we're gonna ask her to do now, because we don't quite have enough wood to do that door, is we go to orders. We're just going to hit, we know there's no like mature trees. A really easy way to do this is hit chop mature trees and just drag over like it's making a great big rectangle. And you can see, like, when I do that, the single tree down here highlights. So she might as well cut that one because hey, it's fully grown. If you look, like, hey, it's a palm tree. It's totally grown, ready to harvest. So she might as well go for it. And then we can look at the stuff that's near it and potentially cut some of those too, because we need to, you know, if we're going to harvest one right here, it's likely it's not going to be 75 wood. So it's nice if we can sort of create a wood pile that's around 75. So she's sort of like picking one up and then grabbing the next one and then bringing it all together at once. Let me see. That one's not bad, but it's kind of distant. So in this case, like, if this was a less wood abundant map, there could become like a resource management deal where you're sort of like, you're deciding, okay, I'm going to clear cut this little area here, or, oh, this tree is almost ready, but I'll wait on it. We have trees everywhere, so that's not an issue. Probably will never be an issue in this map just because rainforest, but if you could pick the single chop wood, or again, like, if you shift and then left click, it lets you sort of like, and now any tree that's I'll get wood from, maybe not a whole lot, but I will, I can cut. And so I will do that, and I'll even add this little one here and this one here. And now she's gonna come out here, and she is just gonna like cut all these down, and then when they're all cut down, she's gonna start hauling all that wood back in. And this is an example where once you get the game going, you're not going to sit here and do all these little choices. But if you think about this pawn, like how she's going to walk out here and how she's going to haul stuff back, probably the best pathing, like the way you want her to work, is you want to send her to like this tree, and then this one, this one, this one, this one, and then she's got this big pile of wood here, and then you can even tell her, hey, haul it back, and then she can come out again to these ones, and then you tell her, hey, haul it back, and then she can come and get these last two. It's super micromanagey, and most players would never like go to this this extreme, and I typically don't as well. Like, you just sort of let the pawn do her thing. But I'm just showing, like, this is a way you can make them a lot more efficient in how they're doing their tasks. Like, you can say, now harvest these right now, and she's already done some of this stuff, and I can even tell her now, I can add to the queue, prioritize hauling all this wood. And you do that for just a single one of these stacks, and she will, within a certain radius, she'll try to pick up everything she can. And if it's at least under 75, which is sort of like the base carrying capacity, there are mods that make it higher or whatever. But and see, so she picked up 75 right there, but she couldn't quite get the rest. And now, instead of her coming out here and picking up 8 and 1 and then walking all the way back, now I can tell her, okay, why don't you like, I have plenty of wood now, so I don't need to like go crazy with what I'm doing as far as like harvesting these trees, and I have so many trees everywhere, so it like doesn't really matter. But I'm going to tell her, okay, you come and harvest these 3, and then we'll make her haul, and hopefully or we can tell her, come haul this, and maybe she'll pick this up and pick all these up, and she'll go back in. And so these ones I'll just go ahead and deselect. Normally I would harvest these because I don't like trees. This is one nasty thing about this this building location and being in a rainforest. The bad thing about trees is they provide cover for raids when like enemies come in, and they can stand right here and be shooting an arrow at you, and they're sort of like crouched behind a tree, and you can be doing the same thing, or you can be like hiding behind these boulders, or even build like sandbags and stuff. But it's nice if you can sort of clear out area around where you're at, so that you at least have a clear line of firing and you're behind cover, but the enemy is not. But that's way ahead of ourselves. Like, we are in like survival mode right now. We still don't even have a door. Okay, like we are and now she wants to keep harvesting. I forgot to undo this one. So I will prioritize hauling wood, and this isn't going to be the full 75 amount, but it's a decent chunk, and now she has plenty of wood, so we can build a door. And I think, are they able to do a basic table? Furniture. What am I doing? I'm looking at the wrong thing. Yeah, they can do a basic table and a stool. So, gotta remember how to flip. See, I have not played this game in so long. I can barely like remember some of the keys. Now, a table costs 28 wood. A stool is 25. That door is going to cost 25. So we need like 50, 78, and we have like 124. So we've got plenty, but she might screw up when she's doing this because her construction. This is another mod. I really like this one. It's called Moody, and you can. I wish there was like a quick way to do this where I didn't have to come and click every freaking one of these things. I like to click them all just so I can like at a glance see what all the skill levels and specialties of my pawns are. Alrighty. So, and her construction, being number 3, it's like she's okay. She can like hammer some stuff together and cut some things, and so she's probably not going to fail when she makes these. But this is one of the things in the early game. Wood is not a great material. It lights on fire. It's easy for enemies to break through, but it's a great early material because it's abundant. It's around typically based on the map you're in, and it's quick to build with. Like, it's the fastest material to build with. So like a lot of times if you're a technology, if your level in tech is high enough to make beds, the first beds you make are wooden beds, just because boom, you throw them up, you got beds. Now we are blessed with having beds just out in the open, which is sort of unfair, but that mod sometimes will do really catastrophic stuff, so there is a balance to it, but it normally doesn't do that, so it is an unfair mod. Nice. We've got a table. It's normal. Hey, she's a good. Oh, she made a poor stool. She screwed up the door. Let's see if she can do it. She has one more chance if she messes this one up. Yay! So now we've got a bedroom, and the way you can learn about your room, like how good it is. It's telling me it's dull. Sorry, it's giving me the levels. What is this? This is different. How is this already a dull room? What is... The bed's awful. Got a table. I guess granite must have a... let me use a tool. Which one is it again? Shit. Takes me so long to remember some of the... Oh, beauty display. So this is the example when I said pawns. They like to be in areas that have pretty things around them. And they will get a mood buff if the area is pretty enough, but they will get a mood debuff if it's ugly. There's a different word that RimWorld players use for debuff. I can't remember. It's been so long since I've watched any playthroughs or really interface with the game along the way that the really hardcore community does. But you can see, so this tool, like, it tells you, like, hey, your pawns, they're gonna like trees, and they're gonna like the berry bush, and they're gonna like this bush, this fern, but they don't like this open patch of dirt right here. It's ugly, and they really don't like these, like, boulders that are just a big pile of boulders over there. I don't understand. How is this a dull room? It should be less, because it's like it's because it's got bare ground and these plants are giving a beauty boost. I see. I don't know if I've ever seen that happen, or if I ever realized, or if it's always been like that. That's interesting. And this is one of the reasons that, like, having this stuff in here as like a stockpile is a bad thing, because you can see, like, the little pile of steel we have is like a -3 beauty. The little pile of wood we have is a -2. And so it's actually hurting this room. But a dull room right off the bat, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, sometimes if you're really cramped for space, you can have dull rooms for all your colonists, and they're fine, because there's no positive mood boost from the room, no negatives to it, which is sometimes like all you need, because you have other things that make your colonists happy. But let me turn off that beauty thing, because I was just trying to figure out why the heck. What is she doing? Oh, she's so I haven't given her any kind of a recreation yet. And boy, it's 107 degrees. She has heat stroke. Oh, great. Oh, just initial. I don't think we have enough. Guess it makes sense. Rainforest. What am I thinking? Like, heat is going to be an issue. One of the nice things, I don't know if this was always available. There's an item that tribal playthroughs get called a passive cooler. It's somehow, like, you imagine your colonist cuts up a bunch of wood and makes it into like a pulp, like shavings, and then like passes water through it, and then the convective evaporative cooling in a rainforest, no less. So this would not work, but it somehow cools the air. And unfortunately, we're short. That's an 89. Yeah, we'll chop this pine tree. So we should have chopped these anyways. Shame on us for telling her not to. And I'm just going to leave this door open for the time being, because I'm going to be in and out of it often. Okay. And then... shit, she failed her construction. So now we need more wood. And anybody that doesn't know this game, or that's just like has maybe seen some of my out of the park videos, and it's like, okay, this is like we're just watching hardly anything happening. I'm slow when I play this game, so apologies. And if it doesn't seem like the game for you, that's cool. But it's a fun game. And okay, you can see like she is hungry, and she if you look in her needs, like this is an example, right? She's still doing fine for her mood. But because she's like happy just to be alive, she gets this initial buff when you first start in this kind of a scenario. And when your colony has like hardly anything, they get a buff like this because they got to counteract some of the crappy stuff that's happening to them. She has an initial optimism. She's like, "Hey man, I'm alive. I found this little thing I can make into a room. I'm doing all right." So she's happy. And right now she has a minor passion for this construction she's doing. She's getting a buff from that, but that kind of like wears off and goes away if she doesn't do it. She is sweaty because it's so hot. She doesn't like being in the dark. That's something I can take care of. She's hungry and she's naked. And you can see like she's hungry, so it's really affecting her mood. And being naked, we can't really do anything about in the short term. Darkness, we can do something about, and sweaty, we're doing something about that right now. But we're also doing that because we don't want to have heat stroke, because you can die if you get too hot and you don't have any kind of clothing. You can see we got 29 wood. And so our next priority is we want to look at our closest meal source and decide if we want to harvest, do we want to harvest this 91%? We'll probably get like 8 or better berries from it, but you need a fair amount of berries to really satiate yourself. And I think just because she's so hungry, and and these are just like, these two are out here, and then we've got this whole other patch here, and this one's not going to be ready, but she's so hungry, we need to just like prioritize this. We're going to prioritize chopping these, cutting these. She'll go and do this, and then and notice she wants to go run back in and start constructing again, but I'm going to tell her nope, prioritize that, because she's going to pick that one up. And I'm going to tell her, no, I want you to haul that wood in there too, because I just don't like it being out there. And now she can, and she probably will, she should eat. Why is she not eating this? Do I have her? Oh, I have her. That's a whole other thing. And it's probably, this might be a mod that I can't remember where the hell is this thing. Assign? Oh, yeah. So this game, you can like, there's a lot of options as far as you can pick the kind of clothing that your colonist that your pawn will wear. You can pick the kind of food that they'll eat. You can pick like what kind of drugs they might go and use and when they might use them. And you can even save like a weapons loadout for them. This is all, I think some of this is like combat extended kind of stuff. And it's cool how it works, but a lot of vanilla RimWorld players will look at this and go, oh, this is cheating. Because part of the limitation of the game is like you can only hold so many things, and combat extended lets you like have a gun, and then you can have like a knife or whatever in your inventory. And then when you get into hand-to-hand combat, you can like go in and switch their gear to be holding that knife. I like that because that's more realistic. I mean, if you think about somebody, if they have like a rifle or a pistol, and you charge them, and you had a big club, and they get into like hand-to-hand combat with you where they can't shoot you. Yeah, a lot of people might, like, if they're holding a handgun, they might be like hitting you in the face with the handgun, which would really hurt, but of course it could possibly be damaging the handgun too. And I think that is it does happen in this game where weapons degrade if they're sort of used as melee weapons when they're really not. I'm not sure about that though. But you can imagine, like in that sort of scenario, when the enemy is closing fast and you're to that point where you can no longer get a shot off, you might suddenly like whip out a knife, and then you're like a knife fighter. And in this game, there's two kind of major types of melee damage. There's piercing, like a knife or like a spear or a sword, where you're actually like piercing and you can cause major blood loss, puncture organs. Like instant death is like piercing kind of, and also very quick unconscious. Like if you got a little knife, you're maybe not killing that attacker, but if you cut them enough, they bleed out, and then they fall unconscious. And they're not dead, but they could die quickly based on their blood loss. If you have a club, clubs are useful for a couple in a couple ways. They are like they're what's it called? Blunt damage. They're like, if you have an enemy that's wearing like armor, like imagine they're wearing like plate armor or like some kind of heavy Kevlar vest or whatever. If you shoot them, it's not going to do much. If you try to stab them, okay, you're like stabbing armor with a little knife. Good luck with that. Like you're trying to find some tiny little vulnerable spot, and they're like slugging you with whatever weapon they have. But if you have some kind of like a club, if you hit that heavy armor with like a big blunt object, you can imagine it would put like a big dent in it, and that dent might like push in and like cut into their shoulder or something, and then they're really in pain and their left arm's not working as good or whatever. So that's the game sort of models those two different melee types, and you can actually in the way that Combat Extended works with the gear loadouts, you can have your pawn, if you want, you can have them hold a firearm, a club, and a knife, or like a stabbing implement and some kind of a blunt instrument. And it's nice because clubs, a lot of RimWorld players that I watch, they'll only use the slicing or stabbing implements. And I realize they're probably such advanced players, they have a whole different level of what they're doing things on. But clubs are nice. Like if you have a small colony and like one colonist has a mental break and they start doing something destructive, like they're like destroying all the food, or they're trying to light something on fire, or they're running around and like getting in fist fights with people. Well, you can equip your colonist with wooden clubs, or with whatever club they ideally wood, because if you're using like a heavier, harder material, you might actually kill that colonist on accident. But you can equip them with wooden clubs, or even just bare fist, which would be the safest, but it could be the longest, and your other colonists would come out with injuries from the fight. But with a club, if you have like 2 or 3 colonists run up with clubs and they start clubbing on that one colonist who's freaking out, they can essentially knock that colonist unconscious, take them, throw them into bed, heal them, give them some food, and when they wake up, they'll get like a boost called cathartic release or something, because they freaked out. They sort of like got some sense knocked into them, and ideally, like they're through their mental break, and whatever issue was causing them problems is done and over with. So ideally, like very quickly, I need to make a knife, I need to make a club, and I need to make a bow and arrows, and I need to build some really rudimentary defenses, because when that first raider comes, if I don't have any kind of way to potentially kill them, if I can't really stop them with bows and arrows, which is likely, and I don't want to just like melee fight to the death, even though I'm decent at melee fighting, I might get like a raider who's better at melee fighting than me and has a better weapon, and then so I'll need to build some little traps and things around where like they'll walk into it. It'll probably kill them, unfortunately, because it is nice to capture raiders early on. It can be tough to keep everybody fed, but then you've got another pair of hands, so it makes a big difference as long as you can sort of get over the initial hump of that extra mouth to feed. But she's like dutifully cleaning up this wall, and I'm gonna have her go ahead and consume those berries. She'll only eat 10 of them, I think, and she ate a whole bunch of them. But now she's got her hunger fully satiated, and if you look on her needs, notice the hunger debuff went away, and you can see this little meter up here saying, hey, it's going up. And so she was dropping and dropping and dropping, but now she's going to pop back up. And this is where like there's a mod. If you see the color around her, and this might be in the vanilla game now. Like I said, the maker of this game, he was open-minded enough to realize when there were good improvements like this, to just put them in the game, and he did. Like there's a lot of things that were improved over time in this game, and you can see like our little passive cooler. It's making it nice and cool in here, probably even too cold once the nightfall hits. Oh, and it's starting to get dark out, and one, she doesn't like being in the dark, so I might as well do this. This is the only source of light that we're going to have as a like a tribal deal here. Oh, I gotta cut the thing if I want. I'm gonna keep that there just because it's a little piece of beauty. Even though I think it will die eventually when we come on, make the lamp. There we go. Now she's working in light, and that will warm the room up a little bit, so it's not getting totally cold here at night. And she's gonna keep working away on this stuff, which doesn't really matter. But what is important, and I didn't do this yet because I was just sort of going through all this other stuff, is a schedule. You can, this is especially important when you get a lot of different pawns, but it's even important now. I didn't mind doing all this stuff, just letting it go, because I was essentially micromanaging her anyways. But a good way that I found to do this, I've read some forum posts and people's suggestions. It's all like personal preference. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff. But I like to set it up, and I'll see if I can do this just off the top of my head. It's been such a long time. I like my pawn to wake up in the morning, and she can go and do something she likes to do. She can go for a walk. She can go play horseshoes. She can sit and meditate. She can pray. Like there's all these like little quirky things they can do to it's to regain happiness, to regain their recreation tab. This one right here. And you can see there's other factors that contribute to this, like the beauty of the room that she's in, how comfortable she is, if it being outdoors, because there's like these plants in here. So, and she's not really hurting for recreation. She's gonna get tired here soon. But so what you do is you schedule, like, first thing when they wake up in the morning, they get up and they can go do something. They'll normally eat right off the bat. That's just like sort of baked into the way. When the hunger gets low enough, they'll first prioritize eating, and then they'll go and like do something for the rest of the hour and it boosts their recreation. And then I leave the next hour sort of free, and some of the pawns they'll go and do little menial things. They might get started on a bigger task and then it gets interrupted, but whatever. And other times they'll continue to do a little recreation. There's nothing wrong with that. And what's good is if you have a bunch of pawns and they're all following the same kind of a schedule, they will all tend to gravitate in the same sort of areas when they're doing these things, because you sort of centralize where a lot of these things are, like where the horseshoe pin is, where the chessboard is, all these like little early game items that you have to give recreation. And when they're all in the same room kind of doing these recreation activities, they will talk to each other on the side, and that also gives them a boost because they're socializing. And they will also, to some extent, they'll form little cliques and kinships, and that can be a good or bad thing. They'll form relationships. That's why I like having a double bed is a good thing. Oh, that makes me realize I shouldn't have put that stool there, because I'm going to put a double bed in here anyways. Oh, well. So I'm going to let her keep... and I didn't finish the... so I leave anything for the next hour, and then I have her work 5 hours straight. And this is sort of like, if you think about it, this is like a 4-10 work schedule, like 4-10s. Like you work 4 days a week, 10 hours a day. Well, she's going to work 10 hours a day, but she's going to work 7 days a week, because this is RimWorld. No rest for the wicked. And this is how I set it up. So she's going to work 10 hours a day, probably more, because she's got these like open free time slots where typically the pawn will go and find something to work on, especially if they fill up their recreation, which isn't hard to do once they have a few different activities to do. But you set it up to where they're gonna work a good amount, and then they do take a little break, and they kind of get a moment to be like social and to be together. And then they can possibly go off and work again or do whatever, and then boom, they're working again for like 5 solid straight hours doing whatever task their work orders tell them to do and that you have set up. and then they take a little break at night. And a lot of times, like when this break happens, they go and eat at the same table, and it's sort of counting as recreation too, because then they might sit there and talk to each other and socialize. It's very cool how this game works. Like it's so impressive that they over all this time how they've like built the AI to sort of behave in these ways. And it's goofy, like stupid stuff happens, and it's the stuff of memes when some of these like these crazy scenarios happen. But it's all part of the charm too when things like that go on. I can get into that more like as they actually happen, or just as I play this game. But yeah, so I set the schedule up like this, and there's people that do all kinds of different things. There's people that will like, they just tell them to go to sleep, and then they make all these anything. And then that sometimes the pawn will wake up early because they're a quick sleeper, or they have a really nice bed, and so they generate rest faster. And then they might get up and do an extra couple hours of work. But I don't like to do that. I like to just give them this whole time to be sleeping, and have my whole colony more or less working at a certain time frame, like a certain schedule, because then and there are times when you get a colonist or a pawn who is it's called a night owl. And that means they're the opposite. They get a mood debuff if they're awake during the daytime, and they get a positive buff if they're awake at nighttime. So you essentially swap this, like you make the nighttime look like this. It's a little bit different because the hours that work out to be a night owl are a little broader. So I think night owls, they might work 12 hours if I'm not mistaken, or maybe I can't remember. But she is now she has her schedule set. So here we are at 1900 hours. And it's still a work, like this is a work. She's on her work schedule. She's going to keep doing this little thing. But when this number 20, when this 20 hour hits, when 8 o'clock at night hits, she's going to stop. And she's probably, just because I don't have anything else for her to do, she would like walk over here and just sit at this stool, or she'd go for a walk, or she'd come out here and lay on the ground and look at the stars. Like in the very beginning, your pawns will they'll find stuff for that keeps them occupied, that they're happy to do, and they and it builds their recreation quickly enough. It's not the best thing to be doing. Like as soon as you can, you want to build a hoopstone ring, ideally, because that's going to improve their shooting accuracy over time. And also building this is good. This is sort of like a primitive version of chess. I will make a video referring to a really cool video on YouTube by the British Museum of History, where a YouTuber goes and plays this game with a historian at the British Museum of History, a really cool historian. And the historian explains the rules of the game. It's pretty simple. It's sort of like a prototype of backgammon. If anybody, like if you're familiar with backgammon, very kind of a similar principle of controlling the board with pieces, but also trying to move the pieces off of the board, and using a dice roll to determine how far the pieces can move. And I believe, if I remember correctly, games like this, like chess like this, if you build them and your pawns use them, it will build their intellect. It will build like that research skill. I think so. It's been ages since I've played this game, and all this stuff that I used to kind of know from having read guides or watched videos, it's not there anymore. I forget stuff. I'm getting old, not really, but I definitely am older. I had a great memory when I was younger. I could like remember stuff, not photographically, but like I could you could tell me a phone number, and like I could just remember, even if the numbers were all crazy and different, I just remember it instantly. There were times when I first started driving, like my friends would, give them a ride, and we'd pick up like a mutual friend. I didn't know the person, and I was going to go give them a ride to their house, and they lived in some neighborhood I was unfamiliar with. Drive them there, and then like we'd go about our way, and then some other time, like 2 or 3 months later, that mutual friend, hey, can we give this guy a ride and give it to his house? And and they pile in, and I would like drive straight to the guy's house, and he would like look at me like, holy shit, you remember, like, how do you remember? And I'm like, I just have a good memory. And you also feel like, damn, man, I'm not stalking you or whatever. I'm not like casing your place or going to rob you or anything. I can, if you show me something, a lot of times, like, it would lock into my mind. And now it's a lot more spacey, and it's not just smoking the weed. It's a little bit of his age too. I can just tell, like, as I'm getting a little bit older. I just don't remember the way I did, but whatever. Oh, and yep, here's her. And you can click a pawn, and it'll say, oh, she's relaxing socially. I guess she's like sitting in this room talking to herself, kind of similar to what I'm doing, or a lot of us do when we make a gameplay video like this and just record it and upload it. I could definitely see where Twitch RimWorld is so cool, and I think I mentioned before, I would like to do just a short video like, hey, these are some really cool RimWorld content creators that I've watched and I think are excellent. Some of the people I've already mentioned. I think Nookrium has done some really cool RimWorld playthroughs. Quill, of course, he's got a really good one going right now. And a really good Twitch streamer. I don't watch Twitch very often, but I've seen a couple of her streams, and she seemed like a sweet person. And she has a really there was a very positive vibe with her chat, and the way that like there's little rewards and stuff to sort of encourage people to interact, and they give little cool little prizes, over a certain amount of time, or it's a really well done stream. Name is 2D Kiri. I think I'm saying that right. I think she's Austrian or German, but she has like a sort of a received pronunciation, like a British accent. If you didn't know better, most people wouldn't pick up that she was like Austrian, or I think it's Austrian. Could be wrong on that. It's been ages since I've seen her stream or whatever. But she's a good one. There's another guy, I can't remember his name, because I was watching, and it was a really impressive playthrough. I'm sure people that are hardcore into this game will just be like, oh yeah, tons of people do those. But he had like this little old lady on an ice sheet, and she was like murdering all these people, and just like, it was hilarious. He's very entertaining. He's a very he's one of those people that's like, he knows how to duck in the door just right to avoid the AI to start to shoot, and then pop back out and shoot, and then pop back in, like one of those kind of players. And I wish I'll do that video eventually, and I'll mention those people, like those streamers and YouTubers specifically. I know I'm just some small person that's like, those people don't need shout outs, but if you like RimWorld, you probably know them. And and you can see, like, she's only got 2 little things of berries. That's barely going to put a dent in her hunger. And now we're going to look. We do have this berry bush here, and this one way off in the distance here. Now this one, because it's infertile soil, it's going to grow fast. So what we might do is we might decide, like, if we can pick 2 or 3 of these berry bushes that have like a really high percent grown, like this one's ready, so we'd pick that one. Oh, please let us have at least one more. That one. Okay, cool. So we're gonna send her out to pick these. She probably is gonna want to do some recreation, but she's so gung-ho on fixing those walls, like, damn. So we'll send her out, and she's getting herself breakfast. Now, nope, don't run back in. Don't forget to grab your breakfast. Good job. And now she is like ravenously hungry. Oh, and she's just gonna. Why is she not eating? Why does she? Do I have something? Oh, I spaced out. I was talking about all these things, and the whole reason I got on all that is you can tell them what kind of food that they're allowed to eat, so that they don't go and eat bad stuff that's gonna like screw them up. I don't like my colonists to eat corpses. There's a mood debuff from it. You can do it in a pinch if you absolutely must, but hay, that's for animals. Chocolate's nice for them to eat. It gives a mood boost, a little bit of a hunger, gives a little bit of a satiation, but barely any. Kibble, we don't want to eat dog food if we can help it. Oyster, this is new. This was not in the game when I last played it, or if it was, it must have just, I'd never been in the biome where it was. Pemmican is this is the tribal equivalent of survival packs, and it's a very important thing for us eventually to research and make, because it would be if we weren't in a rainforest. Let me put it that way. When you are in a scenario when you actually need food to last, and to last for a really long time, like to put enough aside that you're going to survive like some of the events that pop up that can really screw things up if you don't have like a long-term reserve of food. You can't just count on rice and those kind of crops that last a long time without refrigeration. Because there are some events in this game where it will go beyond your typical food stores, and so you need some of this stuff that will last for a really long time. I will say about this as well, and I will probably do a video specifically where I discuss this more in depth. There's a YouTuber, his name is John Townsend, I think is the name. John Townsend, maybe it's, and he does all these cooking videos, but it's not like the typical cooking videos you'd think of like on YouTube where they're like, oh yeah, and grab your wok and do this and do that. He does like a lot of primitive methods for cooking. Like he's particularly interested in the historical period from like the colonization of the Americas. So maybe like 1600 to maybe into the 1800s, because I think he does have stuff about the Civil War, like the rations that soldiers would eat and stuff like that, like what kind of food that they would eat and how they'd prepare it. But he's essentially like, he's very interested in cooking methods and that are from like time periods when we didn't have modern food preservation techniques, like freeze drying stuff and all those kinds of things. And it's a fascinating YouTube channel, and he's so good, and he has great guests on, and I mean it's stuff, it's like the kind of shit that maybe in the very, very beginning used to be on History Channel or Discovery Channel or whatever, and now all those channels are just a bunch of reality TV crap. And his stuff, you know, he's like, here's how they made bread using this method, and they would. He goes all into all the steps, and it's very well done, and some of the stuff he makes looks delicious, and every now and then some of the stuff he makes is like, it looks disgusting, and he even says like, I don't think this is a very good one, or like, I would never make this myself, but it's just interesting. And so I bring it up because he has a series or maybe an episode or two about pemmican, and this was sort of like that time period. It's like the frontier of the Americas, when you had like fur trappers and everything, like sort of west of Virginia, like just when the American colonies were kind of expanding a little bit westward, and there was like fur trappers. The French were sort of all up through the kind of the western aspect of the Americas at that time, and a lot of those fur trappers, they picked up from the indigenous people, the Native Americans, so whatever the correct nomenclature is. I've read, I among other things I studied in school, in college. I did do a little bit of history type stuff, and I've seen like these aren't just cranks, these are like, at least at the time, they were somewhat mainstream historians who would make an argument that even a correct term to use would be American Indian, because there are some tribes that they don't like being called Native American, because it's like they say, we're not Americans, we're Navajo, or we're Hopi, or like whatever their particular tribe is. They say like, we're not that. That's your term for us, Native American. We are not Americans. We are Navajo. We are, you know, whatever. And so this historian kind of made this argument. I don't think it's really. Maybe it's considered old-fashioned now or whatever, so you just say indigenous people or First Nations or whatever. There's so many terms, but the Native Americans at the time, they knew ways to, if you had like meat and certain vegetables and spices, there were ways to prepare it to where it would make, and he describes it in the video, John Townsend does, it's not terribly tasty. It's sort of like a little bit tasteless actually, but it's I think it would be kind of like, imagine if you could have spam that was sort of like jerky, not the taste, like there wouldn't be the taste there at all, but just like this sort of this condensed meat. It's sort of like it's prepared in a way that it will keep for a really, really long time, through harsh weather changes. It won't go rancid, it won't go bad. And they learned, the fur trappers, the French, I believe, the French fur trappers learned the techniques to make this stuff. And there was actually a big industry in the frontiers in the Americas, all throughout that time period, of these fur trappers who not only would they, in the beginning they would skin animals and sell their furs or whatever, but ultimately I think the bigger part of the moneymaker for them was they would be creating and selling pemmican for some of the early colonists to sort of the initial push westward into like the Ohio Valley and some of those early movements west of the British colonies. I don't know my history from that time period that well, so I can't really speak of it off the top of my head, but they learned that technique, how to make this stuff. And John Townsend, in his video, he makes some. He even explains like some of the stuff he has to do. He has to use a little bit of kind of modern stuff, just because some of the cookbooks from that time period, if you want to call them that, they would have very like imprecise instructions. So they'd be like, add a pinch of this and a dash of that, and put it in the fire until it's hot, and just where you're sort of like it's up to your subjective opinion what these terms mean and what the amounts would be. And anyways, that's a diatribe, a whole other thing. But that's our version of survival packs, and that's what we'll ideally. So I go through all these, even though it's a lavish diet. I don't really enable any of that stuff yet because there's no way we're going to be eating any of that. Vegetarian, I do tell her she can eat berries. It'd be nicer if it was cooked or whatever, but we're sort of up against it as far as time goes. I don't want her to eat raw meat. Berries is kind of one of the only raw foods. I think agave fruit, your colonists can eat raw as well, and it's the same as berries as far as like a 2.5% chance of food poisoning or something like that. One thing, maybe raw fungus they can eat and not get the debuff. I don't remember. They can, colonists, I think they might be able to eat uncooked eggs, and it doesn't give them the raw food debuff. Can't remember. Insect jelly, that's like kind of a special item. They can eat that and get a recreation gain from it, I believe. Milk, they can drink that straight, and satiates hunger and no debuff. Milk is a nice item for that reason. But that's all like stuff way in the distance for us. We're like barely scraping by eating berries right now. Now for the meals, I turn everything off, and in the very beginning I just tell her all you can eat if we make anything is simple meals, because that's all we're going to be making. Ultimately, when we have a better cook and stuff, and we have like a good stable food supply, we can make some better meals, and those give mood buffs. So it's nice if you can find meal is kind of like the sweet spot, because it doesn't use a lot of extra ingredients to make it, and it does give a nice buff. Lavish meal, if you have tons and tons of ingredients and food and you don't mind the waste, that's gives a really nice buff. But you really need to have your food situation well oiled, and to really have a good backup. Like you'd have a whole bunch of at least a decent supply of survival meals or pemmican or whatever. You'd have some other alternative stored away. You have a bunch of stuff frozen or whatever, if you're going to start making lavish meals and using up some of your ingredients. But simple meal, and I don't want her to eat rotten stuff. That'd be bad. No corpses. This is mainly here because you can't eat corpses raw. It's not ideal because you don't get quite the nutrition from it as you would if she would just butcher it and cook it. But in a pinch, and when you're like starving and you don't have good cooking skills, or you just eat them, and you might get food poisoning, but you'd probably in some senses get food poisoning anyways. Now let's see what was her. Oh yeah, now she's gonna eat. And she's doing great. I mean, look at this. This is not a some people when they first would start out in a scenario like this, like they'd already be kind of hitting these levels where maybe she's going to have a mental break. Now, what I want her to do, she can finish this stupid fixing these walls, I guess. It's sort of, it's such a time waster, and it's nice to have them fixed because I think those do give a little bit of a beauty debuff, or if not, they're weak and they could be destroyed, and we don't want that. But what was I gonna say? Where was... Oh, I think this is a steel bed, and I got a little pile of steel here anyways. I'm gonna break this bed. I'm going to claim this. I'm gonna reinstall it. Oh, and that stool is in the way. Why did I do that? Damn it. That is so annoying that I put that stool in that spot. All right. And yeah, I've been going 3 hours in this video. So just for right now, I'm just going to have her do this, her sort of like organize these things, and ultimately come out here and move this bed into here, and she would repair the bed too. And after that, I'm gonna stop the video and go get something to drink and take a little break, and I'll probably come back and start another video, but it's essentially me just continuing this play, and hopefully as I keep going here and actually start doing some stuff instead of talking and talking, this emerges beyond just this tiny little 4x4 room. It's so funny, like I'm like going on and on about Townsend's and Pemmican and all this stuff, and like here it's like we barely have a functional startup here, like barely have any food. I don't like this cobra hanging around here. Oh, man, what a start. Castleries are dangerous. If they do attack you, they can fight. They're like sort of like equivalent of an ostrich, and ostriches are pretty nasty birds if you're ever up. Oh, nice. This is not nice that we have a panther nearby. Hopefully this thing like just keeps going and finding little snacks and leaves us alone and kind of moves away. We're not really in a situation to mess with him. Now, he's well fed. He's a happy kitty down here. But we are gonna run over here. We're not gonna consume it. That would give us a debuff. The reason we can't haul it is because our stockpile isn't accepting corpses. So we come in here to corpses and we go ahead and accept animal corpses. All the other corpses we have turned off. And I need to tell this, don't allow rotten. Otherwise, if there's like a dead animal corpse somewhere that's like rotting out in the open, my colonists would go run up and grab it and throw it into here. And nobody wants that in their little living space. So she is going to run over here and grab this and prioritize to haul it. And so this is really nice because what this does is there's a good amount of meat on this. The panther or cougar or whatever that was only ate like a fifth of this animal, and this animal was just killed. And it's going to be like it's not going to spoil until a little over 2 days. So what we can do is we can let this animal sit here, and if we want to, we can go and harvest more berries or even hunt a little animal. But what we should do, what's our wood situation like? Not great. Yeah, I mean it's pointless to be like doing all this repair work. And I hate that snake being so close. That's going to be the death of us. Here I am talking and talking. Yeah, so I'm likely to do now when I come back is a little more clearing and build a makeshift kitchen and a butcher area. And butcher this animal, make a few simple meals, and I don't even think I have enough steel for a basic stove. What is the is it production? Got 80 still. Damn, we're too short, of course. Oh, didn't mean to do that. There is a power conduit. I don't think we would get enough still from that. Maybe. Let's see. 1. Great. Perfect. All right, so... And we don't have enough wood for our butcher table, and we don't have enough wood to really enclose stuff. So yeah, I need a break. I need to get a drink, take a little break. But I will come back and do a second video and hopefully have a little more structure. I said, since I'm so new to making videos and things like that, this is more just I can just make stuff and just sort of let it go and get a little comfortable with doing some of these things. And then as I learn over time, I could be a little more structured and be like, in this video, we're going to build this and do that. But this will be just a really chill, really gradual play of this game until I get massacred by the AI and probably the next when I come back in 30 minutes from now. All right. So we will stop there and be back in a little bit. Thanks so much.